amazing HTA president, Lisa Ayer. We are happy to report that HTA members are participating in the Teacher Evaluation Task Force on HCSD Forward and calendar committees. Anthony had a staff chat at West recently that had very good attendance, and we thank him for those continuing opportunities to dialogue with him. Many teachers have submitted items for the HSF auction, and we're also hoping to have strong teacher participation at the dinner dance. Our next general meeting is on February 25th at West, and we'll meet for the first time with our new CTA representative, Ara Pradian. And lastly, tonight, we are presenting our sunshine letter to the board, which I've been asked to read. It is addressed to Mr. Anthony Rainey, Superintendent. Dear Anthony, pursuant to the requirements of the Educational Employment Relations Act, the Hillsborough Teachers Association, CTA/NEA, is providing the district with public notice of its intention to open negotiations for the purpose of reaching a new collective bargaining agreement. The union intends to address the following areas in this round of negotiations. Number one, HTA will open Article 11, compensation, to propose improvements in all categories of compensation for bargaining unit members. Number two, HTA will open Appendix B in order to accommodate proposed changes in the structure of the salary schedule. And number three, HTA will propose no other changes to the existing collective bargaining agreement. As you know, the parties are required to present their initial collective bargaining positions as an agenda item at a meeting of the board that is open to the public prior to beginning negotiations. Please place HTA's proposals on the agenda of the next regularly scheduled board meeting so that we may begin bargaining as soon as possible. Let me say on behalf of the teachers, the members of the Hillsborough Teachers Association, that we look forward to an expeditious and successful round of negotiations. Sincerely, Lisa Ayer, President, HTA. And we are looking forward to sitting down at the bargaining table. The representatives from HTA will continue to be Pam Muser and Sarah Loyce, Alec McKenzie, and me. And lastly, I'd just like to say, I think you saw a great example tonight of what makes Crocker a very special place and why we here adore this 8th grade class. They are a tremendous group, and they're going to be greatly missed, and I'm sorry that they're not here to hear me say that, but some of you are, so hopefully you'll pass that on to the rest of your group. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Susan. Any comments or questions? Okay. CSCA.
Hi, I'm Sally Rain. I'm the Media Production Coordinator here at Crocker, and I edit a lot of video and work with Troy Hibbert. As part of the CSCA, we had our membership meeting here at Crocker on February 21st. It was very well attended. There were people like me who are somewhat new to the district, as well as people who've been working here for 25 years. And it was really great to get a continuation of what used to happen to what's happening now. And we plan on submitting our sunshine letter before March 1st. We are currently working on it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Comments? Thank you. All right. APG. Hi, Kelly.
Hello. We just have a few things to report, and one special thank you to all of the board members and everybody in the room who attended the community celebration at Champaign for the Chinese New Year lunar celebration. It was ginormously attended and successful and beautiful, and our community members who put it on made everyone feel welcome, and the turnout, especially from those of you who were attended that are here, was very, very appreciated. So thank you for that.
Steve Gilbert up in the corner. The entertainment and the MC duties were stellar.
Please take that back to the whole crew, Gilbert. APG has kicked off our nominating at all the school sites, as well as APG nominating. We've put it in our newsletters, and please continue to forward any information if you receive it in regards to that. And more importantly or exciting, please save April 11th. It's a Friday evening from 5 to 7 for our reception for our Community Care Award recipients and Citizen of the Year recipients, Lee Moon and Mary Ellen Lineker. They have the date secured, Town Hall is helping us, and we will be set for a very nice event.
Thank you, Kelly. Any questions? No? Thank you. Hello, HSF.
Hello, good evening. I wanted to first report to everyone here that, as many of you know, our HSF dinner dance is coming up. I think you see a number of us here in t-shirts on March 8th. We invite you all to attend. It's HSF Rocks the Grammys, and it'll be a great night in support of our incredible schools. If you buy your tickets before February 14th, you get the early bird pricing. We're pleased to also report that quite a number of teachers have entered our lottery for tickets, which is fantastic. Our online auction in support of the dance will launch on February 20th, so look for that as well. And another way to support the dinner dance will be through Fund and Need this year, which will be focused on supporting the district's efforts in bringing and utilizing technology in our schools. So we're looking forward to providing you more information on that. Our annual giving campaign is doing very well. We're at almost 90% of our goal in terms of dollars. We're working very hard on participation. A number of additional groups since last we met with you have joined our 100% participation club, and we wanted to report on that. Our administrative council, thank you very much, and the Associated Parents Group Board has joined the 100% participation club, so thank you. We're also excited to announce that we have classes across a number of our schools that are at or very close to 100% participation within the entire class. So more to come on that in the next few days and weeks. And that's it, unless you have any questions.
Anybody have any questions? Great job so far. You guys have had a lot of energy and a very active year so far. So good on you. Keep up the good work and keep up the energy.
Thank you.
Okay. Superintendent's report, Anthony, 8.6.
I'd like to thank everybody for being here tonight. We had a lot of different organizations say to their constituencies that if you attend one board meeting this year, this is the one. And we've already had a taste of that this evening from the amazing student reports. Thank you so much. We all learned and were inspired by your work. But we also have a very full agenda, an agenda that's filled with innovative thinking, with moving the district forward. And I'm very much looking forward to tonight as a way to continue to innovate and move forward in the district. I also wanted to extend my thank you to Gilbert Y. and his team for the Lunar Chinese New Year celebration. And I noticed that Gilbert, I think there's a couple other members of the committee here tonight. So if you're on the committee, can you just wave your hand and we can clap for you as well, please? Thank you. So thank you for that. I'm going to start with out of order. We'll start with communications. There is a communications team made up of Karin Hardy, Don Geddes, and myself, and we're really working hard to ensure that communication, which is two-way communication, from the board and the governance team to the public, as well as the public to us, we want to make sure that we are having effective communication. So we've been trying to quickly prototype some different things, some of which you're noticing if you haven't been to a board meeting in a while. So we now have amplification at our board meetings. And one of the things we're trying out tonight is this video camera right here is videotaping my superintendent report. We're not videotaping the whole meeting, but we are going to be videotaping my reports during board meetings, as well as during superintendent coffees And then we're going to push that out for the people that maybe can't attend. So if I seem a little nervous, that's because it's the first time I'm on camera for this. So also with communication, my first year of the superintendency, I tried Twitter. And Twitter was very different then, and it didn't really take off. I only made it to about 40 followers, and it was taking up a lot of time, and there wasn't a lot of bang for my buck. Twitter is very different now. If you haven't been on Twitter in a while, there's big changes. You can embed pictures and video very easily. You can also retweet and sign up for information from organizations, in my case, having to do with education. And so I want to really encourage everybody in this room that has a Twitter account or has been, considering getting one, to follow me on Twitter. I am tweeting at least once a day, and that's a good way that I can push out good news happening in the schools. I've shown evidence of essential outcomes happening in the classroom. It was the first time we met Rhett, which we're going to meet a little bit later in the superintendent's report, our facility dog, which you'll get to meet in a second. But there's a lot of really good things happening in the district, and if you want more of that information, signing up for Twitter is a good way to do it. It doesn't come to your email box, you have to go to Twitter, which is kind of nice, because if it's a day where you don't really want any information, you don't have to get it. So I encourage you to go to Twitter and follow me. The AXA executive, at Anthony Rainey, yeah, there's not a lot of Raineys out there, so I got my handle. I wanted to report that I did recently attend the AXA Executive Leadership Center and Superintendent Symposium. We heard from an amazing speaker, Andy Hargrave, who talked about professional capital. And professional capital is made up of human capital, social capital, and decision capital, and how working with each of those three different areas of professionalism really can spur an organization forward. So I learned a lot by going to that. I also learned a lot about the LCAP, the Local Control Accountability Plan, which was discussed during our 5 o'clock session. So that proved to be a very exciting and helpful conference. To give you an update on the assistant superintendent hiring, last week I did conduct one-on-one interviews with finalists and did reference checks with finalists. During closed session tonight, I'll be sharing some results with the board. The board is not interviewing anybody tonight, nor would there be any decisions made tonight, but the process does continue apace. I would also like to tell you a little bit about trees and safety. I've been joking that I might get the reputation of the superintendent that hates trees. That's not true. I like trees very much. We did remove some trees at South that were posing an immediate safety risk to children, and we are going to be replanting some trees in their place. We also safety trimmed some trees at West that were also posing an immediate safety risk to children. Through the West project, the West Wing that is going to have to be taken down due to some changes at the Department of State Architect, and the new building that's going to be placed at West, we also have to remove some trees. We've pushed up that process to remove those trees because recently in the storm, 2 big limbs fell. And so since those trees need to be removed anyway for the process, we're going to expedite that. I'd also like to thank Karin Hardy and Margie Power, who joined me on the tree committee with 2 members of town council and with the town manager. All kidding aside, the eucalyptus trees on Ralston, some of them do pose an immediate safety risk to children. We know that through multiple arborist reports, and recently Randy Schwartz and I looked at every single tree on Ralston and received a detailed report about every tree. The subcommittee that I already named did empower Randy Schwartz and I to immediately remove any trees that pose an immediate safety risk, which is between 9 and 11 trees. There's really no good reason to keep dangerous trees on school or town property, and so we really need to remove those trees immediately. And then we are going to be presenting the subcommittee with some detailed options for what to be done about the long-term health of the remaining trees that do not pose an immediate safety risk, but all of the trees on Ralston Avenue are getting worse in condition as the years go on. They're at the end of their life cycle, so something needs to be done more globally. But again, we're going to be removing the trees that pose an immediate safety risk to children and to the community. I also wanted to update the community. The board already knows that we did have a special meeting on January 25th, and although the meeting minutes were already approved, I just wanted to let the public know that we focused on communication, some of the things that I already brought up here. We also did a very complete debrief of the assistant superintendent hiring process so far in our communication plan to ensure that as we go forward, we can always be doing a better and better job of working with the public and with our staff. We also talked about budgeting philosophy. So in this district, we have a wonderful budget that's made up of different kinds of pots of money that are set aside as reserves, and different pots of money that we had intended to already use through planned deficit spending, but we didn't have to touch. So we started a long-term conversation as a governance team. What is the philosophy? Do we want to use some of that money for current needs? Do we need to continue to be as fiscally conservative as we are now? So that was a big topic for conversation. And we also brainstormed some future items for consideration. I am very proud to welcome Alice Blaquet, and Alice is going to tell a little bit about Rhett, our North facility dog, and Rhett is here tonight to join us. And Alice, if you wouldn't mind speaking into the microphone, so wherever that ended up, we can give it to Alice.
So much for the opportunity to come and introduce myself. My name is Alice Blaquet, and I am the Learning Center teacher at North School. And this is Rhett, our new facility dog on campus. And he will be working directly with students in the Learning Center, as well as other students on the North campus. And we're very, very lucky to have obtained Rhett. We had to go through a very rigorous application process. Some people were on the wait list for 3 years, and we were lucky enough to get him within a year of applying. So I have undergone an intense training in Santa Rosa for a week, where I was matched with Rhett, and we got him through Canine Companions in Santa Rosa, and he is going to help students in areas of communication, gross, fine motor, and as well as motivation, overall motivation. He's already very popular on campus. And he's a Lab Retriever mix. He's 2 years old, and he's been in training for 2 years. So a year and a half with puppy trainers, and then 6 months of intensive training on the campus at Canine Companions. He knows 40 commands, and while I was in training living in the dorms, I learned how to facilitate working with him on those commands. So I brought just some handouts for you guys to look over if you want to pass them down. And you can get some ideas of just activities that we're going to be using to facilitate his interaction with the students in our program. And the kids are already very, very excited. He had a chance to be in our whole school photo today. And it's been a very, very warm exception of him. So we're very, very excited. Does everyone have any questions?
And Alice is being modest. As Angela said to Administrative Council earlier today, it's really not luck that we only waited a year. It's because of the amazing application that Alice wrote and all of her hard work. So thank you for what you're doing for the students of the North Learning Center, and indeed all the students at North. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Finally, I just wanted to make 2 points. I want to say how proud tonight I am to be a part of the Crocker family, and how blown away I was personally by the amazing things that we saw today, so thank you. I also wanted to say, for the benefit of us all, there are teachers, educators, who say things like empathy can't be taught, or that creativity is something you're either born with or you're not, or that entrepreneurial spirit is something that can't be built. I submit to you that that's not true, that our essential outcomes are not fancy things that are on a coffee cup and we put up on the wall. They're things that our teachers live each and every day, and I think tonight was testament to that. So I want to tell the teachers here how proud I am of the work you do every day.
Members of the board, do you have any questions or comments on Anthony's report?
Really small logistic question for Alice. Alice, does he go home with you, and do you extend the training
He does.
outside of school?
He does go home. He knows when his vest is off, as well as his gentle leader, that work time's over. So generally, when we go home, he wants to play. But I do try to keep the commands when we're in the community, and there are a lot of rules that they kind of recommend that we follow, just to make sure that he keeps up with them. Generalizes.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any members of the public have any comments? Thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Valerie.
I just would like people to know that Anthony's superintendent report will be on Vimeo.com, where we have shows from all the different schools. Each school has its own Vimeo.com channel where school events are put up there. I do the editing, and we have a new one that's called HCSD Info, and this speech will be the first video up there. But there will be links in different school newsletters to follow.
Thank you, Sally. Yes, if you don't mind, come down and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Hariti Krishnan. I'm very fortunate to be the Crocker Parent Group president today, and I just want to wholeheartedly and express our gratitude on behalf of the entire Crocker parent community to both Catherine, Chris, Bonnie, and all the teachers at Crocker for raising our children to be such compassionate leaders. So, and tonight's presentation, like Anthony said, was testament to that. So we are so lucky to have you, and I, just wanted to express that on behalf of all the parents here. So thank you.
Okay, item 8.7. Anthony.
So last meeting, I presented a draft plan to spend $306,000 from the state to be used for Common Core implementation. And as dictated by the rules of these funds, that plan needed to be publicly presented but not approved, and then it could be approved at a subsequent meeting. So I've already given this presentation last meeting, so I'm going to do a quick review and then ask if there's any questions. So the plan that I put forward is a balanced plan that includes funding for all three of the areas that are allowed under the rules of this money, which are professional development, technology, both for teaching and for testing, as well as curricular materials. All three of these areas are areas that we're already going to be spending money on, irrespective of this $300,000. To be absolutely clear, we need to spend more than $300,000 on technology and about that much just for professional development and instructional materials. So the philosophy here is that this money would supplement existing efforts in these categories. Briefly, the professional development money would be $80,000, and we have been working with HTA to determine what are the times of day and methods of delivery that are most effective for professional development in the area of Common Core. So that would be $80,000 to that. Instructional materials, also $80,000. These instructional materials, we would start by quickly giving some allocation to each of the school sites, $1,500 to each elementary school and $2,000 to Crocker, so that they can fund good ideas for teachers in terms of supplementing materials that they're already working with when they're creating lessons and units. And the balance of that would be used mostly for a math adoption. We would focus first on Crocker because the materials at Crocker are both older as well as not exactly pinpointed to the Common Core as well as they could be. So we have a lot of need in the area of curriculum, so that would be $80,000 for that. And then the balance, about $146,000, would be spent on computer hardware and software to both facilitate more effective instruction around the Common Core, as well as to facilitate the assessment of Common Core, starting with this year. And so that's the plan, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you have. The core beliefs on page 30 of flexibility, balance, and supplement, not supplant, are worthy of a brief review as well. Happy to answer any of your questions.
Members of the board, any questions? Let me have an explain. Yes, Carmen.
Not a question, I just wanted to say in terms of the core beliefs, the most important part of this for me was the supplement, not supplanting funds. Obviously with other materials you'll see presented tonight, that is definitely not the case. So that has made me, very fine with that.
Any other questions? I had one or two. Tell me a little bit about the urgency in the instructional materials. I'm seeing as soon as possible. What does that look like?
So teachers that have been creating lessons and units are going to their principals right now and they're saying, gosh, it would really be nice if I had this bit of instructional material in order to more appropriately implement the plans. The principals have been able to say yes to some of those things, but now it's February and there's a lot of spending that's already taken place. And so I'm hearing from the principals that there's more perceived needs than they're able to say yes to. So if this is approved tonight, I would immediately start working with Elaine to push that spending plan out so that the principals have that ability to say yes more often, immediately.
The other question I has to do with technology and the infusion of new devices in addition to the ones that we already have. And I was curious to know, and maybe Maureen can help with this, do we have some way of kind of norming the experience? I'm thinking in particular new devices versus devices we've already had for a while during the assessment period. Will there be a way of making sure that that experience is the same for all students across the board?
Yes. In terms of creating sort of a common experience for the SBAC testing, that is definitely what we are trying to do. For example, we will be using the computer labs within each of the sites. Also within the sites, they have a combination of either laptop carts or some older netbook carts. And with the infusion of the Common Core money, we at the sites in which they have primarily netbooks, we want to immediately purchase some basic laptop carts so that then we can again give a fuller screen. Instead of going with an 11-inch screen, then we're able to do more of a 13-inch screen. The other thing we're also doing is I'm also purchasing external mice for any student that would be using a laptop as a choice. But I just feel, again, if they feel more comfortable with the mouse instead of using the trackpad on a device that they're not comfortable with, I'd like to have that as an option. So we definitely are.
Thank you for that. I just want to say it really points out how complex this whole implementation is. It's insane.
And if I can add as another piece, for the testing, we also have to have headphones for each child with external volume control. So there's a lot of little pieces to the testing that are going to be interesting as we go on.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from members of the board? Anybody in the public like to address the board or Anthony? Comment on this plan? Hearing none. Is anyone ready to make a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Item 8.7, approval of the Common Core Implementation Spending Plan as presented is approved unanimously. Excellent. That's a big step forward towards implementation of Common Core. Sorry. Oh, you were like we're pointing out something else. Okay, item 8.8, HCST forward.
So I'm going to be speaking to this item from here because I'm joined by some colleagues on the HCSD Forward Steering Committee. I'd like them to introduce themselves briefly and let you know where they hail from, and then I'm going to start this presentation.
Good evening, I'm Christy Shreve, and I teach second grade at West School.
I'm Janelle Graville, I'm the reading specialist at South School.
I'd also like to acknowledge the many HCSD Forward Steering Committee members that are here. If you are on the steering committee, would you please stand and accept a warm round of applause from all of us for your hard work? Come on, Mona. After this presentation, I'll invite any HCSD Forward Steering Committee member before we open it up to questions and comments from the board. If any of you want to say a few words or add some color, we would very much appreciate that. HCSD Forward has been an exciting and transformational visioning exercise that we've been doing together here in this district. Last year, when it was approved, there were some skeptics, even amongst the governing team. Is this really going to result in changes for our district? Will this just be talk about, or will this really focus us forward and result in innovative work being done at the district? Tonight I submit to you that it was the latter and not the former. We have some exciting proposals to give you tonight that are the product of not just the HCSD Forward Steering Committee, but Phase 1. If you recall, Phase 1 was where we read articles together, we pushed out names of books and topics, we informed the community, we had speakers come here. We also went to see some institutes, and we did our research. We talked with districts that are doing creative things, and we did a lot of research, a lot of dreaming together. We had the HCSD Forward Steering Committee start to brainstorm. That brainstorm was shared with all members of the community through meetings and through digital means. The members of the community including parents, community members, and most importantly, in my opinion, staff members. And they gave us more information. The HCSD Steering Committee took that list, which was 5 pages, and shortened it. We combined some things. We did a first step of, okay, we're sort of already working on this. This seems like a big thing we're all interested in. And then we went back to the community, and we said, here's our list, but it's still too big. We need to narrow. We need to refine. Staff members did some voting, some polling. Community members and parents did likewise. And we made it smaller and smaller and more focused. And then we took these statements that you're going to hear about in a moment, and we revised them, and we revised them, and we revised them. And the HCSD Forward Steering Committee has been facilitated by Maridel Moulton, who is not here tonight, but she's been a real huge ally to have somebody from the outside that specializes in facilitation, but is not invested in Hillsborough necessarily, just invested in the process so that she could kind of rein us in when we got too big for our britches. All of that has resulted in tonight. And tonight I'm very, very pleased to hand the microphone over to some of my colleagues who are going to talk to you about the 5 recommendations. Before they do that, I want to tell you about what if you approve these recommendations tonight. Well, more important than tonight is tomorrow. If these recommendations are approved tonight, tomorrow we will immediately start working on action planning. In fact, in recommendation area 2, we have some action plans to share with you tonight and ask for approval tonight. But we need to have the buy-in from the board to say, yes, move forward to action planning. If we do that, then our intention is to begin big, important things in the fall of 2014 in all 5 of these areas. We'll focus mostly on recommendation area number 1 and number 2. Those will be our highest priority issues. And you should expect, if approved tonight, you will see real and meaningful changes in the fall of 2014 in these 2 areas. And then by the end of the 14-15 school year, meaningful change in all 5 of these areas. So this is really, really a big meeting that we have right now, and I'm very, very pleased to hand the microphone over to Christy, who's going to talk to you about recommendation area 1.
Good evening. The first recommendation the HCSD steering committee has tonight focuses on world languages and world cultures. After hearing from teachers, parents, and community members, we would like to recommend that we bring back World Languages K-8. This program will look different than the prior K-5 program and our current 6th through 8th grade program. We want to give the students options on what languages they take while attending Hillsborough schools. At this point in time, we are not identifying the languages the district would offer, but we do know we want students to have a choice. We also have not decided on what the program would look like K-5, but we certainly want our students to have a world language experience in elementary school. Before we settle on specific languages, we will speak with all of our stakeholders, parents, teachers, students, and businesses around us to see what languages they feel are important and would benefit our students the most in the future. We would also like to allow students differentiation with their world language experience. Students will have the opportunity to choose from a highly rigorous program working towards fluency, or a program that's focused and exposes them to a world language. And finally, we want to focus on world cultures. We want our students not only to be exposed to language, but be exposed to the many cultures from around the world. This program would focus on topics like food, art, music, and traditions of various cultures.
The second proposal we have for tonight is for the utilization and implementation of technology in our district. Technology is ubiquitous, touching almost every part of our lives, our communities, and our homes. Yet our Hillsborough schools are falling behind when it comes to integrating technology into classroom learning. Our goal is to help students acquire the skills they need to survive in a complex, highly technological, knowledge-based world. The intention of this proposal is to take our students and staff beyond the stuff or devices. The goal is to seamlessly integrate technology into how and what we teach across all curricular areas. Ideally, this will connect our students to a global community and become a vehicle for creativity. Integrating technology into classroom instruction means more than teaching basic computer skills and software programs in separate computer classes. Effective tech integration must happen across the curriculum in ways that research shows deepen and enhance the learning process. Effective technology integration is achieved when the use of technology is routine and transparent, and when technology supports curricular goals. Technology, approached this way, will extend our students' learning beyond our classroom walls, while at the same time fortifying the learning done within the classroom. In addition, as Anthony mentioned, the Common Core calls for having specific technologies in place for the assessments. All future Common Core assessments will be taken online. We need to ensure that we not only have the capacity for this at each school site, but that our students are prepared with the technological skills required to take the assessments. In other words, that the content areas being assessed are what's assessed instead of a student's computer skills. This will all be done with the understanding that technology requires ongoing evaluation and the need for resources to support our teachers, students, and infrastructure.
The third area of recommendation is identifying and nurturing the talents and needs of all students. The HCSD Forward Steering Committee really likes this goal because we feel this is an area we really have room to grow. Currently, we identify our GATE students based on their STAR testing scores. But does this process really identify the gifted? Then after they are identified, what do we do with these students? There are gifted students in our schools who aren't high achievers, and there are high achieving students in our schools who aren't gifted. We need to develop a process in which we can identify gifted students and nurture their talents. We also want to focus on our students with special needs. In this district, we do a really good job with special needs students that have learning differences. We have lots of data to show how much progress our learning disabled students have made. But we don't do such a great job with our emotionally challenged students. We need to get better at working with this population of children. We need to keep these students in our schools and nurture them to be successful with our school population.
The fourth proposal we're recommending tonight is in the area of professional growth. An integral part of our vision includes a system of professional growth that is organized and coherent and not simply a menu of good options. A major contributing factor at the heart of a school's success is an exemplary professional development program, one that's connected to and derived from working with students. This proposal will concentrate on creating a culture of innovation and creativity, keeping teachers up to date on new research on how children learn, emerging technology tools for the classroom, new curriculum resources, and more. It will clearly be an ongoing collaborative process to meet the changing demands of our standards and to ensure our teachers will have the tools and knowledge they need to teach our 21st century learners. We want to ensure that tech savvy will become the norm and that teachers and students alike are inspired by what they learn.
Finally, an area I'd like to speak to you about tonight is less defined, and this was done purposefully. We'd like to build a new culture here at HCSD. We want to build a culture of risk and creativity. We want to encourage all teachers to take risks with the new Common Core standards and give students real-world application experiences. For example, after teaching a geometry unit, students will spend time to dive deep and do a project in architecture that gives them real-world application of the geometry they just learned about. We would like to see some of the iLab type innovations happening in all classrooms K-8. We want to bring the essential outcome experiences into all classrooms and learning environments K-8. At the last board meeting, you heard West students speak of risk-taking and failure management with the athletics program and how much they have grown from those experiences. We'd like to see that with all students and teachers district-wide. We want to develop a culture that accepts change and is willing to do experimentation. For instance, when the last bond measure came up, we talked about how all classrooms in the district should look. We made a plan, and we have beautiful classrooms. Well, what if a teacher decided he or she wanted to take out all of the desks and have children work at tables or on the floors and beanbag chairs? Why not try it for 30 days? If it works for that group of students, great. If not, no harm done, and we go back to working in our desks. We want our students and teachers to be creative risk takers on the cutting edge.
Can you clap for these two teachers? So the 5 recommendations are the HCSD Forward steering committees. These words were written by these teachers as something that they feel very strongly about. So thank you for joining me in this presentation. Before we go to the technology action plan, I'd like to ask if there's any other member of the HCSD Forward steering committee that would like to say anything about the process or about these recommendations.
Does it count if we're up here?
Sure, go ahead.
So I sit on the committee, and I've been a part of this process, and I'm blown away with the extent that you just took it to the next level. And I'm so excited to hear what you've just said. And I've always been a fan of the strategic process, the strategic planning and visioning. And what's so difficult is to kind of look in the mirror and say, well, what are we good at and what do we need to improve on? And I think we've had a very honest process, and you really acknowledged the areas that we want to work on, and you articulated it so well, and you've crafted a vision and given us a sense of what it could be. So I really thank you so much.
Ditto, and I would just say I think you just really breathed some life into it. Having spent so much time in the room talking about these things and sort of wordsmithing a lot of it and trying to get down to the nitty-gritty, tonight what I heard was sort of musical. So thank you for that. And I just also wanted to say, Mike is kind of doing this funny thing here. The process itself has been fascinating because to get to this point, we're not really even done, and we actually kind of had to start over at one point too. So I just want to recognize that it's been growth all the way through and reflective in some respects of the risk-taking and nimbleness and the culture that we're trying to cultivate here. So thank you for bringing that to life for us.
Thank you for that. Any other member of the team? Odell?
I was just going to say, as someone who's seen this district go through this process before, this was very exciting, and it was great to sort of re-energize ourselves this way by looking forward. And what I feel like right now is that everything is coming together. You know, this is a perfect match for the Common Core. the staff development fits with the technology fits with what we see children doing. The kids tonight represented our essential outcomes. It really feels to me like we are bringing all the pieces together and getting a focus for what we need to do next. I'm really happy.
Thank you for that. And I also would remind us that the HCSD Forward process was written by all of the administrators at the front table. So if there's any other administrators that maybe weren't on the committee, anyone want to say any words from HCSD Forward?
Amy?
I just want to echo how exciting it was to be a part of it and how excited I will be if this passes and get to. I think it really speaks volumes to who we are as a district and what we can actually do. I'm really excited about it.
I'm super excited about it too, and I loved listening to you put that into your words as a teacher, and I think it would be super awesome with your, back into my middle school, it'd be super awesome if you would put that on the blog just as you read it, because I think it really breathes life into the work that we've been doing for quite a long time. That would be one comment. And two, again, just like Modell said, we began with the essential outcomes and grew from there. And so if you liked what you've seen tonight, or if you'd have had the opportunity to go into my colleagues and listen to the babies at the elementary who will soon get, we're already doing the work. So this is just going to be even more exciting to vote on it and now really put it into action. So thank you, Anthony, and thank you, ladies. You did a great job of representing the group.
I just want to echo that. I want to thank everybody on the committee. I wasn't actually on that committee, and I really wanted to be, so I was really, really excited to see what you all came up with and how you articulated tonight what this will mean, and I'm already very excited about some stuff I want to get involved with.
Thank you. I want to echo what everyone said, but as someone who is new to the district, one of the things that I was looking for, I was coming from a very progressive district, and it was very important for me, if I was to leave that, to join an equally progressive district that has the priority of students and staff. And to me, HCSD Forward and what we just heard, go Janelle, is right exactly where I feel everything should be. As Modell said, things are aligning very nicely, and it is very exciting to be a part of it, so kudos.
I think we're going to pass that there again.
Great job, and congratulations to the entire committee. I wanted to say on behalf of the Hillsborough Schools Foundation that we're so excited to be talking about moving forward and to be kind of here at the intersection between strategy and making some of these things reality. So thank you very much.
So the remaining thing that I wanted to present on before we open it up to questions and comments is the Technology Action Plan. The Technology Action Plan that we have for you tonight for approval does not intend to meet, if you would go back to 2, this plan does not meet all 3 of those objectives perfectly. It is more like a 2 or 3 year start in meeting these areas. And it comes at you from 3 different categories. The first is what we're calling infrastructure. And infrastructure includes increasing the internet bandwidth, access points, creating Google domains for student accounts, and investing in a learning and classroom management software to help students and teachers access and share digital files. It then moves into technology hardware. We would like to move to a one-to-world in Crocker. I say one-to-world and not one-to-one because we want to focus on the student outcomes and not on the stuff. And so we really feel that we need to move to an environment here at Crocker within a few years, as you see laid out in this plan, in which every student has a device in his or her hand. We feel that that device will change from year to year. What the device that we lease or purchase in year 1 might be vastly different from the device that we lease or purchase in year 3. We have to be flexible because technology moves a lot quicker than planned sometimes. So we intend for the first devices to be devices that have keyboards, that look like a laptop or a Chromebook. We feel that that's a good transition for our teachers, some of whom have grown up with Office Suite and Office software. But we feel that that won't be a forever agreement, that eventually we'll move to more internet or cloud-based applications, Google Docs or similar kinds of products. So we want to have the system be nimble enough to change with the times. I'm also excited to present to you an increase to the technology devices at the elementary schools as well. We really feel that our current allocation of about a 1 to 7 ratio or a 1 to 5 ratio, depending on the school at the elementary, is not enough devices to do the kind of innovative work that we want to do. Because the technology will allow us to change instruction so that you don't have to check out a cart when you want to do something creative on the internet, but there'll be more devices for everybody. But those two categories, infrastructure and devices, are not what I'm most excited about. What I'm most excited about is the proposed increase to the people resources. In my opinion, in this district, we have sometimes asked people in technology to do 3 different things that require 3 different skill sets. We ask the people that engage with technology to teach the kids, to take care of the stuff, the devices, and also to help teachers become more effective. Those 3 skill sets are each of them extremely complex. And when we had teacher specialists, we asked them to do all 3. And I think it was a great start. And I think now where we are in the district, I think we need a different kind of environment. So you might have already heard that our remaining computer specialist is retiring this year. We wish her well. We wish her all the best. We would like to re-employ those funds differently to take care of the equipment. All of that money that we were spending on that position will be spent to take care of the equipment, to make sure that when you put your hands on the keyboard, when you go to turn on the machine, everything's working perfectly. So that takes care of the stuff. But who's going to take care of the adults? Well, the adults need specialized assistants. We did a technology survey where we asked teachers, what do you need? And each teacher told us something extremely different. One teacher said, I'm not sure how to put tables in Word. And another teacher asked, how do we do 3D rotation of graphs in Excel and have them pre-populate? Both of those tasks are important to serve our students. But it's hard to have a workshop for each one of those because the needs are so diverse. So we would like to move towards a teacher on special assignment. Somebody whose only job is not to take care of the stuff, but to help the adults, to work individually, adult by adult. What is it that Susan needs? Give her exactly what she needs. What is it that, that Donna Izzo needs? Give her exactly what she needs, etc. Part of that would be reactive. People saying, this is what I need. Part of that would be proactive, going into a classroom, seeing what's going on and saying, hey, Alice Martin, have you thought of this? Let me show you this other thing that maybe you haven't thought of. That TOSA, Teacher on Special Assignment, will give the teachers what they need to do the third, and I would argue the most important thing, which is to take care of the kids. Because we need the technology to happen in the service of content and in the service of students. We also need this TOSA, Teacher on Special Assignment. We need a portion of that at the middle school as well. If we're going to go from the devices we have now and go to one-to-world, we'll need somebody whose job for a portion of the day is only to figure out how are we going to do this transition. What do teachers need? So, as you can see, we have 5 areas. With the board's approval tonight, we will immediately start working on all 5 of these. We will fast track number 1 and 2. If the board also chooses, you can approve a technology action plan that does not cover all 3 of these. We need to do more work in the area of technology, but at least it'll get us back to where we should be, and it'll poise us from getting us to where we could be in the future. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Anthony. Who'd like to go first? Don.
I can go first. First, I want to thank the steering committee. I'm very excited about all these proposals. In fact, I can't wait to see the action plan. So I'm just ready to move on and see the next step. These sound great. So thank you very much for all your work. I had the opportunity to attend some of the community input sessions in the past, and that was an enjoyable process to do the brainstorming as well. I also feel a little bit like Angela. I also really wanted to be on the steering committee and wasn't allowed, so I'm just going to point that out as well. So I have one quick question, one quick comment, and one more extended comment. My quick question is on the technology plan, for the spending plan. I happen to notice that some of the funding mentioned an expectation from HSF fund to need, and I assume this is true. This is sort of for Marin and Maureen, but I assume you've coordinated this already. There's a dinner dance in a month or so, and you're intending to direct that towards this technology plan if the board approves it.
Why don't we have Maureen answer that question, and also if there's anything I didn't cover in my presentation, Maureen, feel free to chime in.
Sure. Yes, we have been discussing with HSF and the Dinner Dance Committee that has been working on the Fund to Need, and we are thrilled that they are excited to focus on technology as part of this plan for the Fund to Need for the Dinner Dance. So very exciting.
And I guess I noticed that also second year, it was also budgeted in that way. So there's some planning for a year from now as well?
We're keeping our fingers crossed. But yes, that was also discussed.
My brief comment I wanted on recommendation number 3, the special populations. I just wanted to highlight that I'm really happy to see the gifted pointed out as a special population that would get extra attention. I think that's a population that hasn't been particularly well served in the recent past, and it's great to see a little extra attention to it. So I'm very happy to see that there. And then the more extended comment I wanted to make is on recommendation number 1, the world language. I love the first 2 bullet items. Those are, in essence, engagement and exposure for K through 5 students, and the balance of both language and culture. I think is a great addition to the concept of what we're doing with this area, and to the essential outcomes that we have already as making our students into global citizens. I think that really addresses it well, and I like that all students will go through that. I wanted to especially highlight bullet number 3 on this proposal, and I just want to say, trying to think of how to express this. I'll contrast it with in the second bullet of recommendation number 2 for the technology. All these things, all these great things we might do with technology, right? So there's a sentence here: create, explore, curate, publish, write, present, edit, film, and engage with others. That all sounds great, and I can imagine that that's do good things with technology, and then when we come to the action plans, we'll probably do some fraction of them first and get to others later, and it's in some sense a looser description of what might happen in the future. So I can imagine, some of those words could go away and other words could come in, and it would be the same basic feeling. I want to contrast that with my personal feeling about bullet number 3 in the world language recommendation. And for the members of the public, I just want to explain a little bit here that due to the Brown Act, the governance team is not can't discuss with each other the topics of this nature. So in public, as we're doing right now, is the only chance we have to express our personal opinions about subjects. So I'm going to take a moment to do that on this item. What it feels to me is that the wording here has been very, very carefully chosen on bullet number 3 for world language. And I want to particularly point out the second phrase, with an option for students to choose a course of instruction to move towards fluency. I think the words option and choose and fluency are absolutely critical for this particular recommendation. And I would say from my perspective, if those words were missing or if the action plans didn't address that description, I would not be in favor of it. I am in favor of the recommendation as written, as long as it keeps to the wording that was very carefully chosen here. I think in terms of the fluency, I think we've heard over the course of many months now a very strong feeling from the community about an interest in extending even more language instruction than we have in the district right now, going all the way towards fluency. And I think if we did not provide that, we wouldn't be responding to the needs of the community. So the option to move towards fluency, I think, is a very critical aspect of this recommendation. But also, I believe it's critical to have the option to choose that. And I think if there had been a proposal to make it mandatory for all children to head towards fluency, I don't believe that's the right course for all children to do. So I'm very excited with the proposal as written, and I just wanted to go out of my way to point out that I think those words should be maintained as they are. And nearby words might not have the same support. And I guess the last thing I'll say about it is my feeling about language instruction. In my understanding, I've tried to do some research and study about the educational benefit of this particular recommendation. It seems very similar to music in terms of the benefit for the students and the way you might go about it. And I just want to contrast what we're suggesting here with what we do with music. So you begin in K through 5 with exposure, different kinds of instruments, some vocal instruction, and some experiences. And then you head towards the option to choose further depth of learning with Mr. Chun's band experience. I will say what we do in music is not quite as intense as what is being proposed here for language. Right? We're not making an option for performance in music at a level that's equivalent to fluency in language. And I also just want to point out in the third bullet, in the first phrase, it does say there is a mandatory section for what looks like middle school. All students will select a world language to learn more deeply. Again, if we were comparing it to a music example, that would be equivalent to saying all students would choose an instrument to explore more deeply in middle school. And we're not doing that with music. And my feeling is music and language in this educational sense are at sort of similar levels. So just wanted to express to the rest of the governance team my reaction to that particular recommendation of one on world language and world culture, but I am in favor of all these recommendations and eager to see the action plans come. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. Anybody else have a comment? Is it sharing?
Yeah, I mean, there is so much to comment on here. I'm just I think I'm just going to keep my comments to just two areas. The first is I'm very happy with the recommendations. I'm thrilled with the work. I'm super excited. I'm particularly excited about the impact we're going to have next year. I think that was incredibly important to this process, and I think it was. And now that we're speaking about language. Who's just entered the room, who's our board member, who's very was a huge advocate of world language. So I'm very in support of the proposals. I just wanted to make a couple of comments. Can you hear me if this goes out? Is that better? In terms of recommendation 3, I to speak also for the non-gifted. I just want to make sure, I think that the gifted, having a gifted program is important. I also think it's important for that program to be fluid. I think it's important for people to be able to be identified more than at one point throughout their education in the district. It's not always necessarily at one point. In the past, we have been making that determination based on just a particular period in your academic career here. So I also, and then so there's that piece. I want the gifted part to be fluid, and then the other piece is just making sure that the middle isn't left out. I think it's very easy for us to forget our middle kids who are doing really well, excelling, and making sure we're really pushing the middle kids to their limits, because those are the kids who are working hard, doing well, and maybe sometimes we're not really sort of pushing them on the edges, which is where they can benefit enormously. The other piece, and this comes to the actual technology plan, I'm thrilled at the recommendation for technology because we're very much looking at this as a tool, and we're not making the device the goal, which I love. I would actually propose moving a little quicker, and I think it's going to be incredibly important for our 8th graders to, sorry, I'm directing this at you two as if you're making the decisions here, I apologize. Point of contact here.
I would, yeah, exactly. I would actually advocate for next incoming 8th graders to have the experience with technology that is going to be similar to their experience in high school. And I think that'll be incredibly important. I think actually maybe moving ahead in 2 grades in middle school might be more important. I've done some work with the numbers, and I think I know where we're aiming to pull some of this money from. And I think it could work, but it would also mean that we might have some more flexibility in adapting more quickly when we change technology, because we will have had it also mean a bigger investment at the time, but it will mean that we'll have more devices coming up on lease quicker as we transition from device to device, because as we all know, and as we said, or as you so eloquently said, there are lots of options out there, and we don't really know what it's going to look like. So I would actually advocate for moving a little quicker there. And I am so sorry about my microphone.
Great.
Does this work?
Yeah.
On the technology, under support staff and hardware, where you talked about the teachers on special assignment, I'm curious, unless this is premature, when we talk about total integration of technology and not treating it as a standalone computer class, for instance, what is the plan for professional development beyond the Common Core money? Because if every teacher is going to fully integrate this into their classroom, I understand the TOSA coming in and assisting and reacting and proacting, but what about the basic professional development for every teacher to be able to do this?
We think it's an all-hands-on-deck approach that is needed, by which I mean that there will still be, in the defined everybody attends professional development days for the whole district, some of that will very much address technology. So for instance, in the case of one-on-one at Crocker, if that's approved, well, that will be professional development that will happen during the summer and throughout the year. That's a push out, everybody comes, that'll look traditional. The TOSA will be more in mind to assist individual teachers with individual needs, and would also push out lessons and units. For instance, one of the things we'd like to have the TOSA think about and create lessons for is coding. And how can we put coding in the classroom? Well, we can't really expect teachers to invent all this, but if we have a TOSA support, then we can task him or her with some of that work. But in terms of professional development, we do have the tech survey. So although I gave you the example of really disparate areas where there's not a lot of agreement, we have other areas where 30 people all want the same thing. They want to learn about Google Docs. So we are already planning, even as early as this year, some opt-in experiences and some summer experiences that will give teachers what they're saying they need. Again, we want to be responsive to what we're hearing teachers tell us, and that's why we pushed out the survey.
It just seems to me that it's almost like doubling up on professional development, because we still have the substance. We have a math adoption, we have Common Core, we have advances in the subject matter of the curriculum that we spend time on already, and now we're going to be integrating technology and how to deliver that. So there may be more needed.
We don't think it's an every or at this point. We think that we need to give teachers both.
On the Anthony, your initial comment actually went to my question on technology. Then I have one question on the world language. I wrote the question down, but what is the impact of what I'm being asked to approve here? And for instance, I went over the numbers like we all did, I'm sure, and 13-14 through 16-17, there's about $630,000 of expenditure out of the general fund. And then the bottom one, 17-18 through 2021, there's an additional $880,000. It's $1.5 million to 2021 out of the general fund. Am I approving that if I vote for this?
Well, as you know, every time we pass a budget, you have another bite at the apple. So what you would be approving today is let us go forward with this for 14-15. We have purposely planned this proposal as something that we can ratchet up or ratchet down. So I'll give you a for instance. As you see, the TOSA is the teacher on special assignment. It is proposed for 14-15 and 15-16 at K-5 only. And then an evaluation if the program will continue in 16-17. Similarly, for Crocker, it's 3 years in order to do the whole rollout of the One to World initiative. And then it would go away. Now, at that point, we'd either want to say, oh my goodness, we really need to continue this TOSA, we have to reintegrate it, we can't lose it, or we look at our finances and say, yes, as planned, this needs to go away. Similarly, with some of the other technology projects, including the laptop. So let's just talk about the laptop carts in the elementary school, right? So we would like to have these laptops be on a continuing basis. Again, we've learned the lesson that you never buy technology, you only rent it. But if there was a lean year, we could extend the life and do some band-aids. That's what we were doing when the times were tough. The laptops, we pushed them and we made them last 7 years instead of 5. We're seeing the effects of that now.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make clear that approval of this or implementation in fall of 2014 is approval of the 14-15 allocations and not through 2021.
Right, but you would be approving that staff would work towards this end in
But
future plans.
each year we would have a budget in front of
Correct.
us to approve, so we're not committing these expenditures through 2021.
Correct.
Okay. And when it says it's coming on page 38, the money coming out of HCSD general fund, have you talked about what fund that might come out of, or Fund 17? I don't even know if Fund 40 can be used.
That would partially be the $724,000 of planned deficit spending, and part out of Fund 1.
Fund 1, okay. Thank you. My only question on the world language, it kind of goes to what I had an option circled also. I don't know how to ask this. If I select one world language to learn more deeply, then there's an option to choose to go to fluency. Towards fluency, can anyone do that, or is it going to depend on my prior performance? I mean, if I'm not making it at this level, I shouldn't be able to be choosing to go towards fluency. Does that make sense?
Yes, and not to punt the question, but that's a great question that we haven't answered. So that would have to be answered in the action plan, which, as you know, would also come to you for approval.
Yeah, because I wrote down, is there any performance requirement to go to the next level?
Yeah, we haven't determined that yet.
That's it. Thank you. Thank you both.
I am too. I wanted to say that having seen the recommendations in the technology implementation plan, I kind of had some similar resonance with what Greg was asking about the financial commitment, and I just want to reflect on the fact that technology is becoming a bigger and bigger portion of our budget. And I think it's unavoidable because I think it's a key element of what we have to do to stay current in our teaching and practice. But I want us to continue to maintain the value that's expressed in number 5, which is nimbleness. And to the extent that we have to make these big investments in technology, we need to be vigilant about not over-investing and committing ourselves and maintaining flexibility with the uses of the technology. So I do like the TOSA because I think bringing people up in the skill level in terms of what technology can be used for and what facilities you might have to be flexible with it will increase knowledge and our ability to scale this. I think we're behind, and I think that's one of the reasons why the numbers are so enormous right now, and it also is the demands of Common Core. But I do want to keep this in mind. That's my only comment. There are no other comments from members of the board. I'd like to offer members of the public to make a comment. And if you would like to make a comment, I will recognize you. And we have a microphone over here. Please come on down and say hello.
Good evening, everyone.
Yes.
My name is Christina Tan, and Joshua is my youngest in the district, and my comment is also to world language. I sat on the Mandarin committee about 8 years ago, looking to start Mandarin at Crocker. And our biggest issue was finding a credentialed teacher. And in my older kids' private schools, even though those teachers don't have to be credentialed, they still have great difficulty finding teachers in subjects other than Spanish. So my comment would be, just to ensure in the action plan that the languages chosen have the quality of teachers available, so that the language program is not substandard to the amazing teachers that we already have, so that they are up here, like our current teachers. And that's all.
Is there someone else? Laurel? Yes. There was somebody else over here before. Sandy, I'm sorry. Marsha. Jean, sorry. Jean is first. Yeah,
I
come
am
on
Jean
down.
Peruka, fifth grade teacher at South. Just clarification for me and some of the teachers probably here. The TOSA thing you're talking about, is that one per elementary school? Or is it one shared through 3 elementary schools?
So the way that we do comments now is
Oh,
we're going to
sorry.
write down your question, and then at the
sorry.
end we'll
Didn't know
respond.
that was-
Yeah, and that's okay. Is there anything else you want to offer?
Just saying, it's overwhelming for teachers. It sounds great. We're very enthused, but it is overwhelming for a teacher, adding in world culture, adding in all the technology and the Common Core, as Dan was saying. It's just going to be overwhelming, but we're going to do our best to try to do what we can. But I'm sorry, I didn't understand it. We couldn't ask questions.
Yeah. You can ask a
I can
question,
ask
we'll
it, but
just
I don't-
answer.
I'm not getting
The
answers.
format is we'll
Okay.
get the answer maybe at the end, so hold my thought.
Laurel?
Hi. Hi, my name is Laurel Miranda. I'm a resource parent for representing children with special needs in their district. And I just want to say tonight was a really special night to me. I saw 3 instances where children with special needs were totally integrated within the presentations. Today we had Crocker talking about iKind, and they had a video of a child with special needs, which I cried. I don't know if anyone else did. But just to have children with special needs, but not anyone, saying with a big sign, here's a child with special needs, just like, there's a child with special needs, and the middle school children embraced him. That was really special to me. Alice, I don't know if she's still here, but that was Crocker. And then North, we had a teacher who, on her own initiative, brought in a facility dog. I don't know if you know this, but a canine companion is probably a $10,000 animal that she got donated to our district, which is incredible and so amazing for those kids in that classroom. I'm so excited about it. I've talked to at least 3 of the parents of children in that classroom, and the kids are so excited. They're going to be participating with the dog and walking the dog and feeding the dog and having tasks to do with the dog. I think that's really going to help integrate them even more so than they already are at the North Campus. And so to bring it back to HCSD Forward, recommendation number 3, looking towards children with special needs, whether those are the gifted children or the children who are in special education. I just hope that when it comes time to the action plan, that you involve our resource parents, myself, Jana, Jen's here, Arlene's here, Barbara, and Steve weren't here tonight. But we are very excited about this proposal, and we would love, when it comes down to implementing the plans with Mary, we'd be very excited to be part of that process. Thank you.
Susan?
Hi, I'm not speaking on behalf of the HTA right now, although I do think that what I'm going to say is an opinion that's shared by many Crocker teachers. So this is just an opinion from a teacher. First of all, I want to thank the members of the committee for all their hard work. This is really a tremendous undertaking, and you've done a terrific job so far, and we really appreciate it. I do have a concern also with recommendation number 1 and the 3rd bullet point, but for a different reason than Mr. Geddes. My concern is the language all students and how it relates to Crocker. And with an eye towards nimbleness and flexibility, I would hate to see us adopt a plan that locks in every Crocker student to taking a world language. It's not right for every student. It reduces their other options in terms of electives, and it may have an impact down the road in terms of whether or not we could someday perhaps make science an everyday class, and whether another department may have to suffer and go to every other day, as has been floated as a possibility for social studies. And as the department chair for social studies, I can tell you that in 6th and 7th grade, it's the only classes that our kids take throughout their middle school career where they actually are learning about multiple world cultures. That's what 6th and 7th grade social studies is all about. So there is concern from my department that continuing to make world languages a requirement could have serious impacts and unintended consequences down the road. So I would urge you to maintain a flexible plan that allows for adaptation and change and doesn't lock every student into the same requirements, because it's simply not right for every single student. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public who would like to make a comment to the board at this time? Oh, Stephen. Welcome back. Yeah. Anthony's timing you. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, my name's Stephen Corey. I'm sorry that I missed the presentation earlier. I apologize. I got here, but I'm delighted to be here to able to see these fantastic recommendations be rolled out, but I would like to comment on the first one, on recommendation number 1. I've had a chance to speak with Anthony and some others about this, over the past, 2 or 3 months. And, I don't really, there's some parts about it, I'm not sure what moving towards fluency means. I agree very much with the comment we just made. It's not necessarily right for every student to grow up and become, bilingual and fluent in 2 languages. So I think if we set up a system where we're going to require all students to sort of go through the same program, that might be a little difficult. We should think about that. But I also think that we should be able to dream big, and we can definitely have students in this district that don't have to move somewhere else to become fluent. They should be able to become fluent in another language here in Hillsborough. And so that should be part of the offering. We could go into the deep. I've said to Anthony, I think the whole thing is a little bit flipped around to me, in that many courses of study throughout the world take advantage of the fact that little, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds are just sponges, and they're just learning in language that time, and we ought to be looking at that research and what others do, and be sure that we're setting up a system such that our kids have that opportunity, those families that are interested, to really be able to develop that, age-appropriate, age-level fluency, I think. So some of the way that it's written, I don't quite, follow how it would work. But I'm very excited that it's here, and have confidence in our board. And that's it. Thank you.
Stephen. Any other comments from the public?
So I'm Josh Tan, and as a Crocker student, and over the past 9 years that I've been a Hillsborough student, I really noticed that Spanish here at Crocker isn't the best it can be, and I really feel like that if we add more languages, the system becomes less effective than it already is. because then you're going to have to be hiring more teachers, and these more teachers are going to have to be qualified, yet you never know if the students are going to be really learning what they need to know inside of the classroom. So I feel like the more teachers you hire, the more subjects you start to teach, the more languages, the less effective our systems become to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Karini.
I am Karini, and first of all, for those of you who have known me, so I'm of Indian American origin, and one of the things that I have taken pride in the fact is how open the Hillsborough community is in terms of embracing people of other cultures. I truly take pride in being part of this, community because of that. From when my eldest child was a kindergartner, all the way to this year, every year I've presented an assembly. I've done an assembly for the elementary school kids, and I've done it for the 6th grade social studies. The entire 6th grade, a whole day I come in and I talk about India. I talk about aspects of, when I talk about culture, I talk about, fun things like costume and food, but I also talk about history and, what are things that you hear about India and what is some misinformation that you might have heard, and I try to relate it to whatever they're learning in their ancient civilizations unit. And I take so much joy in doing that because the kids are like sponges. They are so willing to learn. They're so open to it. They ask me questions year after year. This was my fifth year of doing it for the social studies classes last Friday. And we have so many parents in our district who would be willing to do something like that. So I feel like they're an untapped resource that I feel that, what the district and the board could utilize and possibly get input from. Because I think that I love how it's written, that they will develop a perspective and appreciation of multiple world cultures as much as language. It definitely fosters creativity and, and it helps you with your language skills, and studies have proven that if you've taken multiple languages, it helps you with your SAT scores and things like that. An appreciation of multiple world cultures also teaches you essential skills of how to be a great human being, how to be compassionate, how to be open-minded, how to be tolerant. So I feel like we have, a lot of parents who could be great resources in providing input for appreciation of multiple world cultures. And I do feel like, I do think that that's something that, you should tap into, in the future.
Thank you. Anyone else? Address the board? Anthony, at this time, would you like to answer the question?
Sure. The TOSA would be a 1.0 for the 3 elementary schools to share, and a 0.25 for Crocker only.
Any additional discussion on the board? Yes, Greg.
Based on some of the comments, for instance, Susan's comment, if we approve this tonight and it says all students, does that foreclose then a possible action plan that builds in the kind of flexibility that was suggested?
We have always intended HCSD4 to not be guided by the protocol and by the structure, but by what's best for kids. And so all of this just gets us moving forward to the next step. So the action plan is yet to be written, and we're going to be responsive to the things we heard tonight. One of the things I do want to point out is it doesn't say in the plan that all Crocker students will take the same amount of courses. It doesn't even say that all Crocker students will take a course. It says as they progress through the system, they will choose one world language. I think it remains to be seen how we can create a flexible system that allows different students to interact with language differently. And that could, it doesn't, It never says it has to be a course at Crocker. So we're still trying to think of, what could we do with technology? Is there multiple pathways for language study? So all that remains to be seen. To directly answer your question, we're going to present an action plan. The action plan has to be approved. The action plan might have options, and the board can always say no to the action plan based on what we're hearing. If you approve this tonight, we will go forward with these 3 bullets being our guiding force. But if we look at an action plan and find this isn't the right thing for kids, even if it, tweaks some of these words, we're going to present the best action plan that we have going forward to the board.
So if we approve the 3rd bullet where it says all, does that foreclose the kind of flexibility that was commented on tonight?
It doesn't foreclose it, but these become our marching orders that we're going to try to work towards. So if you say, we're not going to change any of these words, this is what we want you to do, Anthony, we will try to build the best plan possible that meets that criteria. That's the criteria that will be approved. If we go into action planning and we find for whatever reason that any part of this is not the right thing for kids, then we'll be upfront and we'll say, geez, we thought we could do this. We have changed the system in whatever way because. That being said, you heard Don say, I want these specific things. So these words will become very important. It's not just, oh, we'll work on world language or world culture. No, these would be our marching orders. So it doesn't preclude that from happening completely, Greg, but these would become our marching orders. So if the board is not in favor of any part of it, we would rather know that now than in 2 months.
And another question based on another comment. And I'm feeling like I don't know how much discretion we have to start asking about the wording here. I guess we do since we're the ones speaking it, right? Does it change the meaning of this if you say we choose a rigorous course of instruction that provides an opportunity to achieve fluency?
Can you say it again?
I'm suggesting based on one of the comments that we consider the wording to choose a rigorous course of instruction that provides an opportunity to achieve fluency.
And sure. And the question is, does that change the meaning?
Unless you can find a.
Hi, Kelly Scandelis. I just want to address one comment towards what Greg mentioned from the HESD Forward Steering Committee member. Achieve was actually something we wanted to avoid in this bullet point because we're not sure that that's actually 100% possible at the end of middle school. And so the idea was moving towards fluency, that fluency is more likely to happen depending on the child in 9th or 10th grade, that kind of thing. So it was moving forward. So I think that part of that may work, but the word achieve we may not want as part of it for that reason.
Yeah, on the other hand, there could be one or more students who actually could achieve fluency given the opportunity.
Right.
I'm just wondering, given all the great input, if there isn't a way to, if we move forward with approving this, we have a sentence saying if the action planning groups determine that this wording might change in some way, that we come back to the board. Because it seems really hard to lock this in. But I think conceptually it all makes sense. And so is there a way we can be nimble and it's I think we all feel a sense of urgency of getting going and wanting to get started on all of this. So can we move forward and reserve the right to come back and say, okay, maybe it's true, it's not for all students, or maybe we can achieve fluency or we can't. But we may not know the answers to that until we get started on the action plan. So.
That's my whole point. I don't want to be locked in.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I don't want to revisit decisions. So when we approve something, I want to approve something and move forward and not say we might change it, we might change it, we might change it. And words like all are pretty interest in flexibility and one of us raises it later, I don't want to be told later, no, it says all, we can't do that. That's my question.
Since we're wordsmithing, I read that, does it really, do we need the word all, which is then it could go either way? As the investment system, students being allowed. And I wonder if that addresses where it gives more flexibility.
I'd like to force the issue. If you tell us that you would like us to try and attempt to design a system that does this bullet, then that will give us a certain kind of marching orders. If you say at the beginning, Anthony, we'd like you to work with your team to build a system that allows some students to select a world language, we will start out with a very different starting point. So I would prefer to know what the board feels is the starting point, with the understanding that absolutely we will maintain flexibility as we start. But I would like to force the issue to have the board say, if the board believes that all students should select one world language to learn more deeply, even if that learning could be different for different students. That could be part of the planning. That maybe some students that means a class, for another student that's a little different. But I would rather know now what the value of the board is, because it'll point us in a different direction.
I agree with what you just said. You said all students should select.
Sorry, Don.
I just. Sure. Greg and Ms. Frankel, I would remove the word all and approve it without that word. And I think, as Jamie said, if you read it without the word all, it does sort of imply most, or basically that would be the typical default case. The only thing that all adds is that no one gets out. And that, I don't think we actually mean that.
Any other comments? I just saw a suggestion for the word may.
So one thing from the committee, I remember we did talk about the value we're placing on this. And it is coming from a value that we think it's important for kids to try and learn a foreign language. Like, we want to launch them into the world having some knowledge of a foreign language. So I think that's why all is in there, because we wanted to set a very high expectation. So that's, I think, why we did it. But given that, maybe if we remove the word all, or we change will to should, something that most of the kids are taking it, but it's not an absolute. Are there any lawyers on the committee?
How about all students will be encouraged to select? It is weaker, but is that what we're trying to do? Yes, Jane.
Because we did talk about this and we actually took this proper and agreed to leave the all, I think the only thing that we could do, without going back to the committee possibly, is to take the word all out, because it still suggests all, and you still have the word will. And I think then it does still give the meaning of what we had as a consensus on the steering committee. That's the only reason I do that. I think it just gives flexibility but keeps the value. So I don't know. It's when you start going should, or I think then we really do get beyond what the steering committee actually made.
I could agree with that.
Is there a motion? Well, public comment is closed.
I'll
Approving the 5 HSD forward proposals presented tonight with the edit that the third bullet on recommendation number 1 have the word all removed, and also that the board approves the partial technology action plan.
Is there a second? Any more discussion, comments? Yes, Greg.
I just want to note, maybe it's just me, but one of the things I was concerned about and has been emphasized throughout this process, that so many people have done so much hard work, and if we weren't part of the committee, we weren't there. And it's been emphasized all along that I totally believe in giving all the deference to that work, to the expertise and the time that was spent, but it's been emphasized that this is the board's decision. So I don't want to feel like we're foreclosed from suggesting changes, and that if we do that, we're dishonoring all the work that's been done. This is our decision, so we can suggest changes.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Are there any more comments or discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The recommendations with modifications of the HCSD Steering Committee have been approved. And thank you again to all of the HCSD4 Steering Committee members that worked hard on that, to all of you who came to a public input session or filled in the blog or responded to emails from committee members. Thank you for all your hard work. I'm very excited for what tomorrow will bring, actually making this happen, so thank you. Okay. Item 8.9, Crocker grading policy. So I will start, as the memorandum suggests, at the end of last year and at the beginning of this school year, the board expressed an interest in looking at a couple of different important issues at Crocker, including the grading policy for really two objectives: to ensure that students that were taking the same discipline in the same grade would receive the same kind of system, so that a 7th grade English student would have the same percentage that goes to tests as another 7th grade English student that was in a different class. But also, the board expressed the opinion to staff that you wanted us to deal with the issue of grade inflation at Crocker for the purposes of making sure that the grade that's printed was the grade earned, so that we're giving the parents and the students the best information that they have in order to go forward and make decisions. That was a objective that the staff took very seriously. Catherine, Chris, the teachers at Crocker have spent multiple meetings talking about a grading policy that would be responsive to the board's request, and they're excited to present the results of that with a brand new Crocker grading policy that will really coordinate all of the teachers at the school and also be able to make sure that the grade earned, the grade printed is the grade earned. So I'd like to turn it over to Catherine and to Susan and to Chris, to present on that. Again, this item is for discussion, just to inform the board of the good work that Crocker has done.
Hi, good evening. Like Anthony said, the board requested that we take a look at this at the end of, I think it was in May or June of last year. But I want to take a step back and say that actually this work started when we had our first networking meeting in 2012. As Chris and I took over as the new leadership of Crocker, something that we heard that was very consistent from 6th, 7th, and 8th grade parents was a concern about the grading policies of Crocker Middle School. They were concerned about two things. They were concerned that there was a lack of equity depending on the teacher for which your student was placed into their classroom, and there was a concern about inflation, extra credit, and bonus points. So we listened to our stakeholders, our teachers. We listened to our parents. We talked to students. We talked to private schools. We talked with Anthony and Modell, and our elementary school principals as well. And then we came together beginning in August and really focused in on the work of creating a fair and equitable grading policy for all students that you could count on no matter what teacher your child was placed in. The leniency or nimbleness that we did allow in the grading policy is that departments could work with each other to determine specific grading policies for English versus mathematics versus science versus history versus Spanish versus PE. So I will turn it over to Chris to share a little bit more, and then Susan. But inside your board packet, if you grabbed it, is our grading policy, and you can follow along.
So as Catherine said, we really wanted to gain consistency across within each discipline. But at the same time, we understand that the needs and the abilities and the focus of a sixth grader is different than that of maybe an eighth grader. So we wanted to give flexibility at the same time to our departments to make policies that would address the needs of each student. For example, a sixth grader coming in from elementary school may need a little bit more nurturing, they may need a little bit more support than the eighth grader who's exiting on the way to high school. So when we were all said and done, and this is over the course of countless department meetings where our departments were able to meet during our collaborative time, and one full day, or a couple of different staff meetings, and then one full day where we spent at the district office with all of our lead teachers. Susan was one of them, who came up with this policy. And we have some school-wide grading norms, and that's what we have up here on the document camera now. We have a grade scale that is consistent for each and every class, each and every grade, and you see that there. We collectively, as a school community, came up with the policy on rounded grades. Some teachers rounded, some rounded. Students grade would not be rounded up, is what we came up with as a school community. The idea is that one needs to finish or cross the finish line. It was a metaphor that was used. A policy there on absentee work, a policy on shadowing. Particularly with our eighth graders. We had a record number of eighth graders who applied to private school this year, and just trying to track all the assignments and the assessments when these eighth graders are out was real difficult, and it was really difficult on the students, because in one class they might have 2 days to turn something in, in one class they might have 3, and another teacher says, I need this stuff tomorrow. And they were getting mixed messages and things of that nature. So really trying to streamline this and really try to create a cohesive, clear set of expectations and rules for our students. From the school-wide grading norms, we went into the department norms. Well, we do have zero as a placeholder as well, and that is when a student does not have an assignment or has not turned in an assignment. All our teachers have agreed to put a 0 into the grade book. So as you as a parent go into Power School, you would see a 0 there. And that serves as a wake-up call, because the 0, as you know, when you see it factored into the overall grade, it can really impact one's grade, particularly if it's a project or something like that. That's by design to catch the attention of parents as well as, of our students as well as our parents, to say, hey, this is something that's outstanding. In the past, if we didn't do that, if we just left the spot blank, it didn't factor in as a 0. So there was a lot of false positives when looking at the grade. Your child could have 5 or 6 assignments that had not been turned in, but if they were just skipped over with blanks, then the grade wasn't impacted. And we thought that there were some false messages there, some false positives there. Thank you for pointing that out. And then we moved on into the department norms. And as you can see here, things look a little bit different within each department. English Language Arts is the first one that we have up there. 6th grade really kind of parsed out their percentages as to how they're going to set up their grading scale. Whereas 7th and 8th grade were a little bit more general with writing projects, reading quizzes, vocabulary, and grammar. But what you see there, particularly with the English Language Arts department, is that things are clear and consistent within each grade level. So if you have Mr. McKenzie, say for 8th grade English, say you had twins, and you have one of your two kids are in Mr. McKenzie's class, and Mrs. Grady's class is going to have the exact same grading scale. And that would be the same, obviously, in 6th and 7th. Mathematics, physical education, science, and then I believe social studies is coming up, and then our Spanish department as well. As you see when you look at the document, you can see that they all have, across the grade level, consistent grade distribution there, instead of having different grades in different classrooms. And then finally, one of the things that we really wanted to tackle as far as grade inflation that we felt would have a real positive impact was getting consistency with retakes, revisions, bonus opportunities, and extra credit. When we talked to our teachers and we talked to our parents, we talked to our students, we realized that there were a variety of different ways in which teachers were handling, say, a retake. If a child didn't do well on a particular test, assessment, quiz, it looked different in many different classrooms, even within departments, as to what that child could do to improve that grade. Some teachers may say no retake opportunities. Some teachers said you could take a retake opportunity, get it up to a certain percentage, or another teacher may have had some sort of different philosophy on the retake opportunity. So if you look at the document for retakes and for revisions, we have a clear, consistent policy within each department, within each grade level. Once again, it could vary from grade level to grade level. For example, we felt once again that a sixth grader coming in might need a little bit more opportunity to retake an exam than an eighth grader who's leaving us. And trying to build that responsibility aspect of meeting deadlines and things as they move on to high school. So once again, there's the different departments with the different retake and revision policies. Now when we talk revisions, that's not the same as a retake. A retake would be the opportunity to take another assessment. Now it would not be the same assessment, it would be one that's a like assessment where the same skills are being assessed. A revision would be something along the lines of turning in a project and maybe it wasn't up to par, and the teacher giving the student another opportunity to revise their work and to make improvements to the work. Think writing in English language arts as being the perfect example of some work that a student would revise or to make edits. And then lastly, the other one that we felt there was some inconsistencies with was the extra credit and bonus opportunities. So if you look up here, not only do we define what extra credit is, we define what bonus opportunities are, and then we have clear set expectations as to who's giving these extra credit opportunities, and then who's giving these bonus opportunities, and what they are, and once again, how they are going to be allowed, if you will, within each grade level. If you look at science, for example, that one where it says in 6th through 8th grade, right in the middle of the screen, science, extra credit, 1 per trimester, up to 3 points, must be pre-approved. So that's, science departments still wanted to have extra credit opportunities for their students because they felt there was, some good value in having students go to science exhibits, go to different, like the Academy of Sciences, and come back and report or read a science article from a journal. However, in the past, there weren't strict rules as to how many one could do. Now there's a clear expectation as to how many they can do per trimester. They need to be pre-approved. So it's a much more guided extra credit opportunity, and much more consistent, much more fair for all our students. So in wrapping up, it's all in the consistency. It's all in the name of being consistent, being fair, and having a shared experience for all of our students and within each grade level department. And I'll hand it over to Susan.
Just very briefly, we think that we've created a policy that is consistent and yet allows for the different demands between different departments and also between different grade levels. So it allows for flexibility as well. And on behalf of the teachers, I would just like to thank Catherine and Chris for their leadership on this issue. This was as inclusive a process as you can possibly get. Every teacher had multiple opportunities to be a part of this. We were heard from, in some cases, again and again and again. We spoke in staff meetings, we spoke in our department meetings, at our grade level meetings. At a staff meeting, we had interdepartmental groups looking at different issues. So this was an incredibly inclusive process. Every teacher was heard, and we thank you for that.
There's a lot of thank yous going around. I want to thank my staff. The first time we kicked this off, they literally on a Thursday worked from 1:30 p.m. to past 6 p.m. just to kick this off. And that just, again, shows the commitment of the teachers to our students and to Crocker Middle School and the district. The second thing that I wanted to say is that I think, again, essential outcomes, HCSD forward, Common Core planning, we are aligning ourselves to parallel the grades to the expectations of the new rigor and the depth and the complexity of what's coming. And at the same time, when a student really earns an A, they're really earning an A. And I think that's critical, because what we don't want to happen is for students to learn the hard way when it matters the most, and that's in high school. And so, if they get a C, if they get a B, we don't like to talk about D's, but if they get a C or a B here, they can learn from it and work with their teachers and conference and go to help centers and have retakes of a different test after they've been retaught. And I think that's an important thing I want to point out too, is that when teachers are getting the data back and they're seeing that the students are struggling, they're not just saying go home and study and then come back, I'll have a retake for you. They're inviting them personally through invitation, through email. Some teachers, Ms. Moody gets as creative as die cutting invitations for the kids and making them feel like this is a really great thing that they're invited to. But they're working with the students and reteaching them, because that's really what's important. And so we're trying to move away from a culture of it's about the letter grade, because really it's about the learning. I'll say that again. It's not always about the letter grade, it's about the learning. And so we're really trying to shift that here in middle school so that students are ready and prepared when they get to high school, where it really matters for college applications. So this is our grading policy, and we would love comment, questions, or feedback from our board.
Thank you for a wonderful presentation, Crocker. Again, it's a great night. All Crocker. I'll open it up. There you go, Don. Go for it.
I think Crocker's been busy tonight, so that's not the only event.
All year.
Not even done yet.
So I really want to thank the staff and teachers for doing this great work, and consistency of grading sounds like a wonderful goal. So that's a fantastic job. I just want to be sure, I think I understood the proposal. I want to be sure I did understand. You just made an example of if a student gets a B or a C, that, with the impression that presumably that isn't ideal, that isn't what they wish. But as I understood the proposal, the retakes only can get you at most up to a C, and wouldn't be applicable if you got a C or a B.
So that's a great question. If you make a below a 75%, you can work your way up to a 75%. But again, I think what's really important and what we want to drive home is we want to move away from the importance on the letter grade and the importance to learning. So no matter, I'll use Mrs. Jadalrad's class as a perfect example. You can get a 98% on her test, and you are still going to revise and work with her on the problem that you missed. Because for her and all of our teachers, it's really important that you understand the material. So even though you may only be able to work up to a 75%, if you even make an A minus or you make a B, you have the opportunity to get some re-instruction and reteaching from your teachers so that you have a clear understanding and mastery of the material. Math's a perfect subject. If you don't have that, it builds upon each other, so it's going to get you later on down the road. So we want to look at the data, isolate that, work with the students, and make sure that they have mastery in the content.
Any other questions? Right?
First of all, what did you use? Totally awesome?
Super awesome.
Super awesome. This is more than I could have ever hoped for. This is, for a group of teachers to come up with something like this is just so, I don't know if you realize how special it is. I hope you do. This is great. To confront something like that and not resent what might be seen as an implied criticism and just go for it and do the right thing. So I salute you as much as I can. I'm really appreciative. minor questions on the overriding goal of consistency. I'm wondering if you could talk about, on page 41 of the packet, in absentee work, for instance, if you're going along saying be consistent, be consistent, be consistent, then you say exceptional circumstances may warrant extensions. What was your discussion, on the theme of consistency, and now there's an exception?
So just ironically, we had a student this year that was out for 30 days with pneumonia and multiple circumstances that had her in and out of the hospital. So the last thing we wanted to do was have her come back and say, she literally came back a week before grades were due and say, you got a week. So we decided that we didn't want to name the circumstance, because a terrible circumstance could be a death in the family, a terrible circumstance could be a move, a terrible circumstance could be several things. So we didn't identify it in the document. What we decided as a team, the leadership team and the administration, is we would look at those extenuating circumstances and again make a plan that met the needs of that particular child.
On page 45, the same kind of question, the extra credit and bonus on the consistency theme, if you will. I noticed in 8th grade it says, offered to the entire grade, and as Chris just went through, there's a maximum, pre-approved in 8th grade science, etc. Then the last line says bonus opportunities are offered at the discretion of the teacher. Is that another opportunity for inconsistency, or what did you talk about there?
So the difference between bonus opportunities at the discretion of the teacher is exactly this. A bonus opportunity would look something like that. That you take your history exam and you finish it. And at the end, Ms. Frankel comes up with a question that really has you dig deeper into your learning, and you might apply it or analyze it or debate it. And so that would be a bonus over and above the test itself.
But the bonus is offered to all the
opportunity.
That's my point.
Exactly. The opportunity is offered to all students, and then Ms. Frankel teaches 8th grade history.
Right.
So all of the 8th grade history teachers would put that bonus question on that particular test, an opportunity for all students to answer.
And my final comment is just to tie this together with something else. I wanted to check to see if this was consistent with our board policy on homework. So I went online and I typed in the word homework, and it came up with board policy 6154, and it's consistent.
I also just wanted to make a comment to what Greg said. I think this was very eye-opening, and I have some teachers in the room. This was really eye-opening for teachers because I really believe that I'm going to say my teachers, my Crocker teachers, my team, they have the best intentions for children, and that's so cool to get to work with each and every day. But our first activity was a carousel where all the teachers walked around to see what the other teachers were doing in terms of grading. And I think they were quite surprised to read what their colleague even next door was doing that they didn't realize. And I think this was a really, beyond just creating a grading policy, I think this was a real learning opportunity for our team and our staff to really get to know each other in a way and on a level that we really didn't. And so, Laura?
Well, I just want to say that it was, that we really learned how to compromise with one another, because we thought, each one of us thought that while we were trying to create this, that we had the right method. And so there was a lot of compromising going on, and we all feel like we feel like, is it on? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so, I just think that, we all grew, within our departments and as a staff as a whole, because we learned from each other how to, maybe how to do it a little better, and maybe how to change something that we thought was written in stone, and give it up for something that was better for the kids that, better for the kids together than rather than for each class to do something so totally different. So, yeah, it was a great experience, and and I'm so proud of what I see up there. It just we really feel like we came up with something that's going to benefit the kids.
I just want to echo Greg's comments and applaud you for your work and this opportunity to collaborate on such a key part of Crocker, and also to applaud the feedback that we've been receiving over the years of kids who've graduated from Crocker and how they may stumble a little bit in high school not understanding kind of the shift in grading policy. So I think this will really give them a firm foundation and potentially make that transition a little smoother. So thank you so much. Really great job.
And I just want to add that I too am very impressed by what you've come up with here as a system and a unified way of approaching student work, as well as the teaching that goes into grading and assessing that work. And I want to make sure that the members of the public realize that this item is not on for the board's approval. This belongs to the school, and this belongs to the teachers and the faculty and the staff that put it together. And so for that, I thank you for investing in it and creating it for yourselves and for the students that you serve. So I just had one question, and it pertains to this last little bit here about the timing. Am I to understand that this becomes active now?
A lot of it has gradually become active throughout the year, and we were just waiting for some of the final touches. But yes, it will become active completely this year. We'll be sending notifications through Blackboard Connect, as well as sending this home with our kiddos, and then it'll be a part of our student handbook for 14-15.
It's terrific. So we have more questions. I'd like to ask members of the public if there's anything that they'd like to.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
It'll fully be active though trimester 3, because we would want to bump a person back or forth in trimester 2.
Perfect. Thank you. Any comments or questions from members of the public? Hearing none. Wait, I'm sorry, didn't see your hand. Go ahead. If you don't mind. Sorry. Oh, wait, yeah, stop. There we go.
So first, I'd just like to commend the work that's been done. I think it's fabulous that there is a common standard. But as in all things I've heard tonight, I hope that there is an opportunity for constant evaluation and improvement as these things occur. One of my most amazing stories about Crocker is my beautiful daughter went to middle school, and I was so anxious about that experience, how hard it was going to be emotionally, academically. And that first year, it was very, very difficult. We had a lot of challenges, especially with a specific class, and I'm not going to go into specifics, but the teacher who was in the room tonight was unbelievable. She was amazing at helping get through the emotional challenges that go into moving from a 5th grade school into a 6th grade school. And I know that in all of the specifics of everybody moving to what is appropriate across the board, that of course I think that's fabulous. I just don't want to lose that compassion. I think that that's so important in moving into middle school, and it was the most wonderful experience for me, for our family, and I just hope we can maintain that, because I think that laid a foundation for the rest of the middle school years that have given us just a great experience at Crocker, both academically and emotionally, and I think that's what middle school's all about.
And we agree wholeheartedly with you. That's why there is a definite move from 6th grade to 7th grade to 8th grade. And if you look on the grading policy, we give a lot more room for our 6th graders because we realize it is a transition year and we want to support them as much as possible. So it does progressively get a little tougher, as it should, as it does in high school, and that's why we built that in for 6th grade. So thank you for noticing and commenting.
Any other comments from members of the public? All right, hearing none. Thank you again. Okay, item 8.10. Susan, are you gonna go sit down and get back up again, or are you gonna stay right there? Okay.
So I'm actually going to start with this one. Washington, D.C. Last meeting, 2 meetings ago. 2 meetings ago, we talked about Washington, D.C. A presentation was given. The memorandum is reprinted in the board packet for your convenience. A survey went out. A second survey went out. And I think credit is deserved by Catherine, who really continued to work through some complex issues at a time where other people might have just said, forget it already. But they kept working, again, with a second survey. We also kept working to understand the ramifications legally for the district, which is going to be my part of this presentation. So as we went into the Ed Code, we noted that out-of-state trips work differently than in-state trips. And there's some key there's some key differences as to the things we usually expect in an in-state trip. In an in-state trip, like our Yosemite or an outdoor education, all of the students that want to go can go. And if they do not want to pay, if their families don't want to pay, then we still can pay for them. We being the district. The district will support any student that wants to go, even if the parent does not want to pay for whatever reason. Out-of-state trips are a little different with 2 key differences. It is no longer in an out-of-state trip that a parent doesn't want to pay, it's that a parent can't afford to pay. There has to be some kind of economic need. So in an out-of-state trip, the parent can't simply say, I don't want to pay, so send my kid anyway, but it has to say, I cannot afford to pay, and has to attest to that. So that's a key difference. Another key difference is the district is precluded from spending $1 to support the student to attend the trip. We can support our teachers, and we can pay for them, but we can't directly support students. So once this became fully understood by all of us, we changed the way we did the survey, because now a community organization would have to have some pass-through dollars. So I think that those 2 key differences are important for the board to consider. Tonight, the Crocker team, once again, will present some information and some recommendations, at the end of which our recommendation will be that this trip is viable, this trip should happen, and this trip should happen this year. There'll be an opportunity for you to ask questions, though I have to state that this really is go time if we're going to make the trip happen this year. So if we can answer your questions and you vote yes, great. It's the kind of thing where we really can't bring this up again in March. So this is a decision point for us. We have to either go or no go, at least for this year. So I'm placing a little bit of pressure on the board to make a decision tonight. With that, I'll turn it over to the Crocker team to present some information.
So as we resurveyed, these are the new results of the Washington, D.C. trip survey, except for one minor change, and that's that we have 127 who will be attending and 45 who will stay back and receive education through a variety of opportunities at the school site. Again, this number changed just a hair. We have 118 students who will be able to make the full payment of the trip. We need 1 full scholarship, and we need 8 partial scholarships. Again, a slight update. We had a generous donor. So again, our full scholarship need went from 2 to 1. And we need 3 partial scholarships in total, and additional scholarships needed to make the viable trip for all children interested is 4. So let me just go over these numbers for a minute. We have 2 of our families who have donated 2 full scholarships. And so there's only 1 additional full scholarship needed. We had all of our families come together where you could put a dollar amount in the line, and that equaled the payment of 3 partial scholarships. So in order to make the trip viable for all students interested in going, we need to collect a total of 4 additional full scholarships. And I just want to ask if anyone has any questions on that, because I know that seems... So, in other words, all the scholarships that are necessary and needed to make the trip out of the 9, we have 5 of those covered, and we need 4 additional to make the trip. It's the simple math. It gets me. Okay. Again, this is based on 127 students because we had 1 that filled out the survey, but for whatever reason it didn't get in the database. So 45 students will participate in a virtual and cross-curricular lesson plan for the week while attending school, while opting to attend school that week. The trip and total donations needed is $8,408. They're still needed by February 27th, the commitment, in order to make the trip viable for all students who are interested in going. So if you recall in our meeting, you have the right to opt out and not attend. If you don't want to attend, that's fine. We had 45 students that said for reasons such as we go to Washington, D.C. every year, my parents live in the Washington, D.C. area, we've already gone to Washington, D.C. It could be a number of those types of reasons. They were not based on financial reasons. That totaled 45 students. So out of the 127 students who want to attend, the trip is still short by $8,408 in donations needed by the 27th from the community in order to allow all 127 students to participate. As Anthony said to you, under the new Ed Code for 2014, the district is not allowed to put monies towards this field trip. And so in order to do that, we will have to work with parent group and come up with a plan to do that. But again, in talking with my parent group president and some really faithful, wonderful people at the school, they feel very confident that we can take care of this. So all of you who met Greg, who is the regional manager for the tour guide, I worked him a little bit after our meeting and after I saw the results, and we were able to do some of the things that you asked, such as we will have 3 buses that all of our students will go on. The ratio is down from 1 to 12 to 1 to 10, so 1 student adult to 10 children. And we will have 3 bus tour guides as well. We also have security at all times, and that is in the hotel as well. Who are the who? That will be decided by our superintendent and the board as to who the who are. But at this point, we have down 2 administrators, 1 counselor, 9 teachers. and 3 tour guides, or the other option is 1 administrator, 1 counselor, and 10 teachers and 3 tour guides. So those are the 2 options. Again, based on 127 participants. We really were not eligible for any payment plan because it's already February, and the payment was supposed to be due in full in February in order for the trip to happen. But again, I told Greg, you're making an investment not just for this year, but for years to come if this ends up, if this gets approved. And so I asked him if he could please at least give our parents the opportunity to make 2 payments. And so even though the trip was supposed to be paid in February, which is how it will be if this gets approved from this point forward, but again, then we would be working from August to February to do this, he did go ahead and allow for a February payment of half of the money and then a March payment for the balance. At this point, and I wanted to be very clear about this, there is no option for trip insurance because you had to book the trip before February in order to buy the insurance should anything go wrong. So I'm going to be very clear as I was when we had the meeting. Once you make a payment and a decision to go on the trip on February 27th, half of that payment is due of $1,050. That is non-refundable. Okay, I think I said that 3 times when we were together, but I really want to make that clear because again, it's about integrity. I don't want anyone to walk out of here and lose $1,050 and not fully understand that once you make the commitment, it is non-refundable. The rest of the balance of $1,050 is due on March 28, 2014. The last thing I wanted to say this evening is if this gets approved by the board, the paperwork will go home tomorrow. It must be in by the 27th. That's not the board's rules. It's not my rule. It's actually the tour company's rules. It has to be filled out in full, every single piece of it, including medical history, contacts, so on and so forth, and a check attached. At that point, the door is closed. The seats are purchased for the airplane, as well as the deposits and all of the things that they do with restaurants, the tours that the kids will be taking, as well as the airplane fee will be paid. Final and non-refundable installment of $1,050 is due on the 28th, and that pays for the rest of the trip, and then we would be taking the trip in June. So the door actually is closed by the tour company, not by the district. As of February 27th, you cannot add on. And if you decide not to go, then again, 4 times, you would lose your deposit of $1,050. That is our presentation. It's pretty straight and to the point. But I'm happy to take any questions that anyone might have. And Susan is as well. And I want to thank Susan. She's been amazing in getting this off the ground for our kids. So thank you, Susan.
Go with Connie first.
Just a couple things. First of all, how much of the 8,000 is already pledged? So is that outside the pledged amount?
That's outside the pledge amount.
Okay. Second thing is, Susan, how much sleep are you getting? Because you have been on well, I'm a little worried about how much you're getting in general. This is about the 4th, and you're still on another agenda topic, but you've been working hard, so thank you. Thank you. Yes, I don't expect you to actually, because I'll be scared by the amount of sleep you're getting, but thank you very much for the hard work that went into this.
A round of applause.
I need to ask a quick favor. The students who are in the room, I have no idea how my colleagues are going to vote. Should they approve this, can someone text my children whenever the result is?
We will.
Thank you.
We'll be happy to.
That was my only question.
Dawn.
It sounds like a very exciting trip. I think it seems like the students are really excited. The teachers want to go. It serves an educational purpose. The parents are really excited. Everything about the trip sounds great, except the ed code. The ed code doesn't sound very good. So I want to explore that a little bit more. let me ask a simple question first. The bottom of page 49, it says no transportation allowances shall be made by the superintendent. I just want to verify, I assume the district is going to fund the teachers going, and this doesn't exclude paying for the teachers' airfare, does it?
That is correct. Page 49, it makes it look like that sentence is sort of a standalone paragraph, but if you go to the next page, page 50, it actually continues the paragraph. So this is really about busing. And what it's saying is, look, if you use your buses for out-of-state trips, then you have to make allowances for the depreciation of the school buses that will occur as a result of said out-of-state trip. Since we will not be using buses, that sentence doesn't really apply because it's really all connected to district-provided transportation.
So you're not using buses to get there, but there are 3 buses in DC, but that's part of the tour package?
Right. That's a fee. That's not district transportation.
And then I guess I want to explore, Mary Ellen is no longer on the board, so I want to channel her and use the black glasses and try to understand what's the worst that could happen in this situation. So one aspect is, I guess, district funds. Some teachers will be gone and some students will be gone. I assume there will probably be some substitutes that would be hired for that week. Do you have a rough idea how much money that's talking?
We've talked about that. There will be blending of the classes because most teachers that will go do not solely teach nothing but 8th grade. Similarly, most teachers that are staying do not solely teach just 6th and 7th grade, so there will be some sharing. So if a teacher that's staying at Crocker sometimes teaches 8th grade students, well, that teacher can be redeployed. This is actually something that Crocker has experience doing for other purposes, so they've done that in the past. There might be some kind of reasonable substitute cost that would be borne by the district in order to make the trip happen.
And I can answer that in definite numbers. We've already done the ratios with the amount of students in the new survey. We would be hiring 3 subs, which we've already secured. It's our top-notch subs for that week. And the rest of it would be shared throughout the teachers that we have on campus, just as we do with outdoor education.
Thanks. Okay, so the worst case scenario I'm looking at here, as I think I understood the ed code that you provided for us, so if a family wants to go and they say that they can't afford it, then either funds must be raised and that must be paid for, or else the trip has to be canceled.
Correct.
The district cannot possibly pay for it. So it sounds like the worst case scenario is the survey comes out, that's not a financial commitment, that's a promise that you will pay. The question is what happens, so half the parents pay the deposit on the end of February, and then Catherine was mentioning that it's non-refundable, but I assume most parents are probably thinking of, hey, if their illness or weather or something happens, then they'll lose their money. But the reality is what could happen is some parents could change their minds by the end of March. And
that's the worst case scenario.
And in that scenario, the parents who have paid lose their deposit and the trip is canceled. And there's nothing the district can do about it, unless funds are somehow raised to pay for those who say they can no longer afford it.
That's correct.
So I just want to be sure the parents are clear about what could happen and who is financially responsible for it in case that situation were to come to pass.
So again, during that meeting for which Margie and Karin both attended, I drove that point home, I think, at a minimum of 3 times, so that everybody knew what could possibly happen. If the trip is canceled by the tour company, that's a different story. If you decide not to go, then the risk is that you lose your deposit. One thing about the 27th is if we have a lot of people by the 27th, let's say back out, Dawn, then we would take those out obviously before we turned over the checks, and we would talk to the tour guide company and say, okay, we had 22 back out, what's the cost going to be? Is it going to increase? So on and so forth. I think the bigger question is what happens if parents can't make that March payment
Right.
for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And so that's a real concern that could happen, and that is something, again, that we went over a number of times when we talked about this as a group, when the parents asked me to move forward with a second survey.
So the parents have to be aware that they're trusting their own community. The parents are trusting themselves.
Exactly.
Correct.
Thank you.
You want a second bite again? Karen?
Thank you. I think that to that point, might be worth reiterating in any communication after this meeting should go forward, just to drive it home one more time for anyone who wasn't here.
So I want to be real clear about one thing. If students back out, let me make sure that I say this. If students back out after they've made the first installment of the $1,050, if students back out, I've talked to Greg, and it's in the paperwork that will be going home tomorrow. The trip would not be canceled because 20 kids backed out after they paid their first installment of $1,050. They lose that deposit, and that secures the rest of the families to keep their trip from going up in order to continue and be able to go. I think, I'm going to say that again. Okay, so if all 127 students in February fill out the paperwork and they pay the deposit, and 20 kids all of a sudden don't, go, the price is not going to go up for the remainder of the kids who are going, and the trip continues. I think the bigger question and what we drove home the night that we had the meeting was the flip side. If 127 kids say they want to go, and February 27th comes and 127 people have committed to pay, and on February 27th, 20 of those people decide they're not going to pay, but they still want to go, then Dawn's point is very valid. Either we find a way to pay for the 20 children, or the trip is canceled. So I think that is the more important piece of what we talked about that evening.
And the only amendment that I would make to that is they wouldn't decide that they didn't want to pay. They would attest that they had an economic need and couldn't afford to pay. So that's an important distinction. They can't just say, I don't want to pay anymore. They have to attest that I cannot afford it, I need economic assistance.
Any other questions? Marty?
I have a question. I think this sounds great. I really appreciate all the work that staff has done on this. The only question I have, and I apologize if I missed it, is just the game plan for raising $8,000. It's a couple weeks away. You guys have a plan for raising the $8,000?
We didn't move forward with any of that. I've talked to Harini, I've talked to the parent group as a what if, but I did not want to move forward under the assumption that you were going to pass this. I wanted to give you the opportunity to think about it and let me know if you were going to pass this, and then I'll move forward with the $8,000. I mean, the bottom line is, as of today, we have 127 students who are interested in attending. 9 cannot pay. We have monies for a lot of that. We don't have monies for all of that. And I just want to be clear one more time, because we had a question in the audience for Susan. The $1,050 on February 27th, because we do have families that need to make 2 payments. They just need to, and we want to honor that because we want as many children who want to go, we want them to go. And the way that they could do that is by dividing up the payment. If 10 kids, though, March 18th, back out of the trip, it does not change your payment or the fact that your kids can still go. We will still be going. We will still be on the trip. The thing, and I just really want to, it's important to me because it's important to my integrity. The part that I want to drive home tonight is, if everyone pays on the 27th, and come March 14th, I'll use Anthony's words, and they deem it impossible for them to be able to now afford the expense of the trip, that's what we have to think about, because those kids under Ed Code have the right to attend, and we have to figure out a way to pay for it. So that's the thing I really want everyone to think about tonight, because, you know, I'm not saying that's going to happen. All 127 seem very gung-ho, according to the survey. But if 10 backed out and they weren't able to pay, we would have to figure out a way to either pay for those children or the trip would be canceled. Because every child who wants to go has the right to attend. Does that make sense? Because I just want to make sure I'm really clear on that.
Catherine?
Yes.
I have another question
Yes.
for you. So the timing of this trip is still that first week in June, is that correct? Okay. And that's pretty close to the end of the year. There's not going to be a lot of time to sort of reflect this time. Should we approve it and it's a success, what are your plans for future trips in terms of the timing?
Although there's not a whole lot of time to reflect, Susan, Chris, and I would, of course, prepare a report for the board, because we do have a board meeting in June to let you know how the trip went and whether we would, whether we would suggest that the trip be something that we look at each year. And then I would work with the new parent group president as well as their team to start talking about this in July and August, start talking about it in the forms that we send home to all of our parents through registration through the computer and so on and so forth, because we can make this, of course, a lot more affordable if we plan in advance. They have different payment plans. They also have trip insurance if you do it early enough.
Yeah, I'm talking less about the money
Okay.
than I am about the student experience.
So again, we would give a report to the board.
I was just gonna say that our recommendation is crafted that says, it's recommended that the board approve this enriching trip to Washington DC for this school year. It is further recommended that the board direct staff to consider whether or not this trip should become a Crocker tradition, and if so, what changes, if any, should be made to the trip on a going forward basis. And I think that would include what's the best time.
Right.
We were locked into not very many options this year because it's late. We need all the time we can get. I think it would be an open question. A, does this continue next year at all? And B, if it does continue, would it still be June? Would it be a little bit earlier? You know, what would we change? And that would all be discussed. We wouldn't just say, okay, well, it's always gonna be the first week in June. Just like we wouldn't say we always, have the same program for the 8th graders that are staying here. We're gonna reflect and make changes if we feel it's needed.
Absolutely, we will write a full report and make recommendations. I mean, there might even be something in the trip we wouldn't do again because the children didn't enjoy it or something, so very detailed.
Minor point, Anthony, I was gonna ask, for my part, I would, very minor point, I would hold off on that second recommendation until I hear their report.
Yeah. One final note here, what does virtual lesson planning look like?
So we would be using our iPads and our computers to take some virtual tours through applications. You can actually download apps for your iPads, so we would take them through a virtual experience at school, whether it be the Holocaust Museum or
that is tracking what the trip participants are doing.
We would do some of that, not all of it, because they'd still need to go to math and they'd still need, but we would do something that would be cross-curricular that had a DC focus.
Any other comments or questions? Members of the public like to address the board on this? Yes, actually, if you're interested, you can go ahead and queue up, or you can stand next to Mr. Geddes down here. He's got a microphone, it might be shorter.
Hi, I'm Brainy again. I feel very, very passionately about this trip. And many of you have heard me in the January meeting. My older daughter took took a trip to Washington DC independently through a tour company, and it truly changed the way she viewed history, the way she viewed a lot of the things that she learned in 8th grade social studies. I do believe that the opportunities that these kids will have, whether they're going to the Arlington National Cemetery and laying a wreath on the tomb of the unknown soldier, they're going to the Holocaust Museum, they're going to all these experiences. This is something that is, that you cannot quantify in words. I think this would be a life-changing experience, and this would be an amazing Crocker tradition to implement. And as far as the parent group, one thing I want to remind the board is this is something that every single 8th grader at Crocker is passionate about. And I can vouch for that. All 191 8th graders submitted a petition to you requesting that this trip become a reality. I've talked to so many 8th graders at school already, and we already devising ways in which we can make this happen, whether it's involving student council, doing fundraisers, they'll sell ice cream every day if they have to, if this trip will become a reality. And I cannot tell you, and there are some 8th graders here, and I'm sure they can tell you
They're ready to
passionately,
talk
exactly,
to us.
they can tell you passionately, and for me, yes, I have an 8th grader, and I would love for her to go on this trip, and she could do it through another tour company, but to go with the teachers that she has been with for the last 3 years, that have inspired her, that have motivated her, and to go with her peers. And it would be the culmination of her experience at Crocker. It's a different thing to go to Great America, it's a different thing to go to Raging Waters, but it is a completely life-changing experience to go and not only study these monuments and sites that you're reading in 8th grade social studies, but the shared outcome and the shared experience. And there are Crocker kids that are Crocker alumni that still talk about outdoor ed. They still talk about Yosemite, and I bet you years from now they will talk about Washington, D.C. So I hope you will approve. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Eliza. When my social studies teacher, Miss Frankel, first mentioned this to my class, we were all so ecstatic. Our jaws were dropped. We were just floored with this idea. Every day when there's a board meeting, she'd come into school, she'd write it on her board. She'd say, "There's a board meeting today. Come, show your support at 6 in the lecture hall." And the next day she'd come and she'd report to us exactly what you guys said. Word for word, she'd write it down exactly what you guys said. We'd spend about 10 minutes each day just talking about this. Every day we might have spent a bit longer because if you know my class, we are a bit of a handful to deal with. But we know we're really passionate about this. We talked about how the ways we could show our support and how we could contribute to this experience. We questioned whether or not we could help and how we could help. We talked about car washes, lemonade stands, and even a petition. And I took that into my own hands and I wrote the petition for you guys. As you saw, we have about 191 kids in my grade and about 180 kids signed the petition. I ran around my whole lunch with my directory yelling at kids saying, "Sign the petition, sign the petition. We will go to Washington, D.C. And they almost everyone I asked ended up signing it. As you can tell, I'm really passionate about this cause, and I feel like it'd be a great experience for 2014 8th grade class to experience, all the 8th grade classes to come. I'm very glad I got to show my support, and thank you for taking this into consideration.
So hi, I'm Maggie Murdoch, and when I first heard about this, I'm pretty sure it was through friends, because as you might already know, word spreads around Crocker pretty fast, and people were so excited that they would get the chance to actually go on a trip together, because I have friends that are from other schools and go to Washington, D.C., and they say that that is one of their favorite parts about their entire time at middle school. And I know that I have lots of friends who are part of the symphonic band and go to Disneyland every year. And they say that they have older brothers and sisters, and whenever this time rolls around and they're preparing to go to Disneyland, that is all that their older brother or sister will talk about, because that is something that they remember forever. And when I first heard about the trip, all I wanted to do was go on a trip with my classmates and have that same experience that they got to have. And I know that cost is a pretty big issue with this trip, but I know that, like Eliza said, our class would be very much willing to raise as much money as we could. I know that Hillsborough is fabulous at raising money for our schools, and so I think that by January 27th, we could probably have a group together and start raising money. Also, I would just want to thank you guys for doing this for us, because this is just such an amazing idea, and I know that so much of my class feels so passionately about it. I know Eliza was texting me all after school, wondering which people had signed it and who hadn't signed it, and if I knew anyone that would want to sign it. The whole school day, before school, and the day before, and I helped her write the letter. And it was just great because then you can actually feel how passionate people are about this topic. So thank you, and also just as one more quick thing, I think that would be a great experience for us to actually live what we see, live and see what we're learning right now. Thank you.
Anyone else want to venture in to top that?
Never. Those girls are way too cute. Quick question, the ed code, you cannot pay for students, but the administration is all paid for, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then secondly, I'm totally for this trip, and I totally believe these kids can raise the entire thing and none of us will pay a dime. But is there a way to change the due dates so that, God forbid, someone does back out, we have a week to raise the money? Because I really don't want to be put in a position where I put a down payment down and something happens and now I'm losing money. I just like the opportunity to make it up if we could. And if we're all due on the same day, I think it just puts us in a weird position.
Catherine? I'm going to wait until it goes public comment. Answer. This makes things go quicker. It's not that we don't want to give you the information. Is there anyone else who wanted to address the board on this subject? Catherine, briefly. I'm sorry. Patsy, go ahead.
I think the DC trip is amazing. It's a good trip to go. But I find out a couple other schools. Last year, Rawson Middle School, they are going 3 days in DC and 3 days in New York. Only 15 students going and 2 teachers, 1,200 per person, 7 days, including air. So why we are paying 2,100 for 100-something people? So the cost for our school should be a little bit lower. And then if they can, including the New York and Boston, I think will be much better, because just the DC is kind of waste for 4 days, 5 days for that short trip. So going to the East Coast, they should think about maybe extend it to New York and Boston. That's it.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Catherine, do you have a quick answer to the prior question for clarification, or is it covered under your prior 3 advisories?
I'm really sorry, I forgot the question.
The question was, can the due dates be changed for...
Thank you, I got it, okay. So originally, there was not going to be a payment plan. It was just gonna be the full dues due by the 27th. And what I tried to do is, as you know, people were able to write on the survey, and what I tried to do is take into account all of the needs and requests of different people. And there were people who really needed that 2 payment plan in order to make the trip a reality. And I just felt like when we talk about making decisions in the best interest of all students, you know, that would have excluded a few families from perhaps being able to go on the trip, or adding to that number of scholarships needed. And so what I tried to do is take all of the input and talk about a decision that would work best for everyone. And I understand what you're saying, and I don't recall if you went to the meeting that we had
Yeah, we talked about this a lot.
If I could just
Sure.
stop you really quickly.
No,
I know
actually,
I-
I'm public comment
Okay,
is
I'm
closed.
sorry.
It might be the best thing is to try and get in touch with Catherine after the
Okay.
meeting if you have any more questions.
Sorry, I'm not a board member, and I would just let you ask.
If we're running very late, and so, thank you. Is there any more comment or discussion from the board? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'd like to move that we approve the Washington DC trip for this year's 8th grade class. It's in the back.
Second.
More discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. You guys are going Yes. All right. 8-11, Teacher Evaluation Task Force. Susan, how you doing? Hang in there.
I so apologize again about the
Don't worry about it, I just freaked out. I'm sorry.
I know, but that was absolutely my fault. I thought it was done stacking, it was gone. Thanks for wrapping. All right.
See, the teacher evaluation task force is a big draw.
It should be. It should be. It should.
We're still here.
I'd like to start, and Susan and I will be tag teaming this. In order to expectation set, this is an item for discussion only, and not for approval. It's such a big, important part of what we do. We did not want to surprise the board and have you consider something for action, and the same day that you're getting all this information. So this was done very purposefully. As you know, last year, in the last negotiations, Hillsborough Teachers Association and the Hillsborough City School District agreed to work on teacher evaluation as a collaborative process where there were 4 teachers selected by Hillsborough Teachers Association and 4 administrators selected by myself to serve on the Teacher Evaluation Task Force. We have been meeting monthly since the beginning of the school year, and tonight we present the culmination of those months' worth of work. We started out by consulting the research. We looked at research from the New Teacher Project. We looked at research from California Teachers Association and the National Education Association. We looked at research from EdSource, research from School Administrator Magazine. We also then consulted all the exemplars of really cutting-edge, effective teacher evaluation processes, because we knew that we did not need to start from scratch. There was a lot of good work that was already done. We started we next talked about the rating scale, because as a result of some trainings that some of us took, we found that the sticking point in some of these processes is a rating scale, and determine, is it going to be meets and does not meet, or is it going to be a more robust rating scale? We went to the teachers with a proposal. How do you like this rating scale? We got input. Then we began building our system, again, not from scratch, but based on the exemplars that we have seen. And I am so excited of where we're coming out. In our current evaluation system, we have 12 different items that every teacher is rated on, whether they have been here for 6 minutes, 6 years, or 3 decades. They have the same system once they receive permanent status. And that system is, you have 12 different things we rate you in, and you get a meets expectations or does not meet expectations. We make no allowance for flexibility. We make no allowance for options. Everybody has the same system. We found that that was not a system that is really based on solid evidence and research, and it does not give each different teacher what he or she needs to be successful. And so we have proposed a 5 different pathway system. I'm going to be talking about the 1st, the 4th, and the 5th pathway, and Susan's going to talk about the 2nd and 3rd. We know that you've already read it, so we're not going to go through it all again. We're just going to highlight. The first pathway is for non-permanent teachers, so non-tenured teachers. These teachers will participate in a pathway that's very formalized. We will ask them to perform for us all of the California standards for the teaching profession. We'll be looking at every single one of them. These are 6 different areas, to which in Hillsborough we've added a 7th area, which we're excited about because we gotta make CST plus because we're here in Hillsborough. We gotta do more than the state does. And these first or second year teachers will be rated in all of these 6 areas, and we will hold them accountable to not only that, but to the essential outcomes, district goals, and school goals. That will occur for a period of 2 years until they achieve permanency, or if they achieve permanency. I think one of the most useful pages in this document is the protocol for each path. The protocol for Path 1 is on page 102, and as you see, there will be 2 evaluations for these first and second year teachers. These are teachers that are first and second year to us. They might have already done 10 years of teaching experience somewhere else. Each evaluation will be based on 1 formal observation and 4 informal walkthroughs, which means 2 observations and 8 informal walkthroughs for the whole year. And it's very rigorous. There's evaluation deadlines and everything's all laid out. Most teachers will only do that for 1 to 2 years. Most of our permanent teachers or tenured teachers will participate in pathways 2 and 3, which Susan will now explain.
Feel free to sit. Well, thank you. Are you sick of me yet? All right. So most teachers will find themselves on paths 2 or 3 in most years. Path 2 is similar to the current formal evaluation process. It involves a certain number of formal observations as well as walkthroughs, perhaps collecting data or evidence depending on what the principal and the teacher think are appropriate in that setting. Path 3 is what's really very new and remarkable, and we're really happy about it because that acknowledges that there are teachers who are doing special things already, and that these things should be worth evaluating just on their own basis. So things like HIPS, participation in a master's program, or allowing for special creative ideas and projects that can be proposed to principals that will benefit the school as well as the teacher. And so this gives a lot of flexibility, and teachers can choose to be on Path 3 once in any 3-year period. So no more than 2 years in a row can they be on Path 3 without going back to Path 2 for that 3rd year, so that there is a consistent formal evaluation as well that involves observations. But we're really happy with it. It's been a really tremendous experience with a great committee and wonderful collaboration between the administration and the teachers, and really a remarkable experience for all of those who've been involved in it.
The only thing I'll add to Path 2 is in Path 2, a teacher has already attained experience in the district. So we're no longer looking at every single CSTP, but we're focusing on a few key areas that we will arrive at together, the teacher and the evaluator. Path 4. A minority of teachers in the district will participate in Path 4. In Path 4, the evaluator has determined that they need specific targeted assistance in order to be fully successful. And so in this, there are fewer CST elements that are decided upon. The evaluator selects up to 5, the evaluatee only selects up to 2. And then there is specific support that is given to the teachers so that they can be successful. That's written into a plan, a support plan. There are 2 evaluations now. So each of these evaluations is again based on a mix of formal observations and informal walkthroughs. So there's more regular feedback given to a teacher. The hope is that at the end of path 4 year, that the teacher will once again return to the path 2 and 3. So you might go to path 4 a couple times in your career. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean you're a bad teacher. It just, there are specific areas that really need guided, specific support. That's path 4. Path 5 is a little bit more, it's a lot more robust, to be frank. So in, again, a minority of cases, at the end of path 4, the teacher has not yet made significant progress that would, convince the evaluator to move back to path 2 and 3, the standard protocol for teachers. And so in that case, they would go to path 5. In path 5, again, there's only a few CSTP elements that are chosen. In path 5, there's a district administrator that joins the evaluation team. The teacher can select a colleague or a representative as well to support them. And now there are 3 evaluations. It becomes more robust, it becomes a little bit more prescripted, there's more notes taken, more evidence of what is being done to support this teacher, with the hope that this gives the teacher enough support to be successful. Before I turn it over to the board for questions, I'll just give a few more general comments, and then I'll ask if any other member of the administrative team wants to make a couple comments. Every teacher is on a path every year. There's no off year. There's no year where a teacher is not evaluated. That was a conscious choice that we talked about and made a conscious decision. Everybody's on a path every year. Just different paths, different years. That's something I want to state strongly. Number 2, we feel that student artifacts, student data will be important in some cases and less important in others. So we built in the option of what student data, what artifacts, if any, are necessary depending on where you are in the process. So that's done very, very flexibly on purpose. We also, I hope you noted, took pains to define everything that could possibly be defined, at least that we could think of. What is an informal observation walkthrough? That's defined. What is an observation? That's defined. So that we're all agreeing on common terms. I also want to reiterate what Susan said. It has been a highly collaborative process, and I'm excited where we are. Administrators, either that are on the committee or not on the committee, I'd like you to speak briefly about what this evaluation system can give to you. What do you see as the highlights? And Susan, if you wouldn't mind passing.
You don't have to go first. No, as someone who's relatively new to the evaluating process, this is differentiation for what our teachers are doing, and it was kind of frustrating for me, where I kind of questioned, and I guess as a teacher never really paid much attention to it, but how we're evaluating someone brand new exactly the same as someone who's been here for 20, 25 years. And, it was exactly the same kind of cookie cutter thing. So, not to mention, I'm sure this came up over and over in the talks with the committee, but a lot of the standards seem to be interrelated or very similar in what they were assessing. So this is clearly differentiated and allows one who has experience to focus on particular parts. So I think that's great.
I sit on the evaluation committee, but you've heard from me all night long, so I'm just going to say this. This is the absolute best committee I sit on, and I sit on a few. I love the people. It's honest, it's vulnerable, and it's allowed us to really come to some great decisions, which of course always tie back to what's best for kids. So I'm really proud of this document. I absolutely do not like the document I use now, so I can't wait for this to move forward. I think it's going to provide feedback that's going to be really great for our teachers. Hi. I am on this committee. This is the one I ended up on, which is awesome. I totally love it. No, I mean that. I'm not actually being sarcastic. I absolutely love this. She's right. It's one of the most dynamic committees out there, and everyone's worked so collaboratively together. But what I'm excited about, well, actually, I'm excited about a lot of aspects, but definitely the idea that it's not a pass or fail, that there's a gradation, and you can be working on something in one area. One year you could be working on something, you could be striving for excellence in one area, or just when you think you've got your curriculum down, now you've got Common Core, so now you're not there anymore, and you're just sort of always working towards excellence. I'm very excited about that. I love the idea that there's choice, and that there's so many opportunities for leadership for those people who have been here, and we want to get them doing other things to help curriculum in general. That's very exciting, that it's not just one method of a formal observation system, and I love that it's aligned to the new standards, and we created our own standard there called Standard Number 7, which I like too.
And a lot of it's already been said, but I'd like to add that I think Pathway 3 is a really exciting opportunity, remarkable for anyone who's teaching in this community. Great opportunity.
I really applaud the committee's work here. Actually, I was on it, but other than that, I really do. I mean, it was a great time. Getting a little late. Other than that, one of the things I found most heartening about being on that committee, and one of the things I liked best about it, is how similarly the teachers and the administrators were thinking about the process, and how we both had the same goal in mind about creating really good teachers and rewarding really good teachers and moving good teachers to becoming even better teachers. And that was not something where you would think in this process, a lot of people might run from an evaluation committee process as the least likely thing they would be like to be on. But to me, it was very affirming that in this district, the teachers want the same quality that the administrators want, that the parents want, that the kids deserve. And that came through with the agreements that we were able to come to about moving people forward. If anything else, but bring those teachers in from how much they wanted their profession to be solid and respected. I figured you gotta keep going, right? But I think just a couple things that sort of tie into what we've heard throughout today is both in the execution and the development of this is participatory, really just bringing everyone together. And also the flexibility as well as the adaptation. And as I sort of see the different paths, it's really a growth model. And that's the exciting piece. And it's exciting that it's being welcomed by all sides.
We'd be happy to respond to your questions or hear your comments. Again, just as we've asked the teachers for feedback, this is your opportunity to give us feedback to help us make a better document to be delivered to you next month, hopefully, for adoption.
Who wants to go first? Dawn. You're getting comfortable down there with that first comment thing. Yeah.
That's good. You used to require it, right? You just start here. I'm glad you don't do that anymore. Nonetheless, I just wanted to thank again the committee that worked on this fantastic document. This is a great, well, aside from our last agenda item, but the entire agenda today has been amazing. So I'm really impressed. We just heard comments from basically ACM about their reaction here, and I guess I'm curious about teachers' reaction. And Susan, you may be the last teacher in the room, but you were on the committee, and I mean, it sounds like it was a very collaborative committee, which is great. And so I assume the committee, this is the output of what the committee wants and is suggesting. Has there been feedback from the general teacher community? Is there anything that can be reported on about what the teachers in general feel about this?
Every step of the way, we've sought and solicited teacher input, and we've received a number of very, very good suggestions that we've taken back and then incorporated into this document.
That sounds great. I have one kind of a silly question, I guess, in general. The CSTP, this is coming from the California State, and applies to all districts, maybe not so much ours. I saw a lot of wording about English language learners. And I was just curious how significant that is in this district.
I would say that it's extremely significant in that English language learners need special attention and special instruction. I think that different than many districts, we don't have as many of them, which in some cases is a special challenge, to be frank, because if you're at a school that only has 4 English language learners, it might be easy to say, we don't really have to think differently for them. At the same time, you know, in some districts where you have 8 English language learners in your class every year, you have to keep up that muscle of pictorial input and SEDI strategies and GLAD strategies. But in a district where you might not have an English language learner in your class each year, it gives a special challenge when you do have one. So although we don't have a tremendous high number of English language learners, we feel that those standards are still important to adhere to. Thank you.
Should we just go down the line?
Are you ready?
Right.
All right.
I just have a few clarifying questions. Again, thank you, Susan, and to the rest of the committee who's been involved in this. To have a teacher evaluation process that people are talking so excitedly about is fantastic and unusual. I know you know that, and that's really special, and thank you very much for the hard work that's gone into it. I have just a couple clarifying questions for my own knowledge. In terms of the paths, I just wanted to understand, so if path 1, you can be on it for a maximum of 2 years, is that correct?
Correct.
Path 2, you can be on it you're on it for 1 year, or how many years consecutively can you be at path 2?
Okay, so think of each path 2, path 3 as a 3-year process, okay? So there's 3-year cycles. Every 3 years, you have to do pathway 2 at least once. You have to. You could do pathway 2, and then pathway 3, and then pathway 3, and then the 4th year back to pathway 2. Or you could do pathway 2, pathway 2, pathway 2.
And then you have to, and then
You never have to do pathway 3.
Okay, so
It is a teacher's choice.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So who does pathway 4 and who does pathway 5 is an administrative choice. A teacher cannot be forced to do pathway 3. That being said, the principal reserves the right to encourage, to say, hey, you know, I think this is great for you. Here's how I see it working. What do you think? And at the end of the day, the teacher can say yes or no to pathway 3.
And then pathways 4 and 5, it's 1 year maximum on pathway 4 or pathway 5.
As
Sorry,
correct.
they're consecutive. No, so you could spend 1 year only on pathway 4 and 1 year only on pathway 5.
I would say yes, and one of the changes that we made as a result of feedback that we received is on page 101, paths at a glance. I'd like to point out the last 2 sentences. It says,
You can do anything.
in emergency, in emergency situations, an evaluatee can submit a written request for a change to be made to his or her evaluation system. To take effect, the request must be approved by the evaluator, the HTA president, and the superintendent. So in certain extraordinary emergency situations, there might be a time when there's a true emergency, and then we'll deal with it as it comes. But again, each of the 4 people, the person has to request, and the HTA president, the evaluator, and the superintendent all have to agree that certain extraordinary situations, emergency situations, but in general, yes, that's correct.
And then the only comment that I have is, you know, again, I'm blown away by this. I would just like, I hope in the spirit of a lot of things we've been discussing tonight, and this is a huge agenda, is that this process, similar to other things we're talking about, has flexibility and constant growth in it. So, you know, as you go along, this won't just be you know, we developed it and put it out there. I'm sure, and it sounds like this is the process you're doing anyway, that it'll be constant feedback and constant.
So Karen, one of the things that we don't have before you tonight, but is going to be covered at the next meeting, is there are certain kinds of language that we have to recommend to be inserted into the actual contract. And one of the things that we don't have language for yet, but it has already been an agreement of the committee, is that this committee, these 8 people, will reconvene at certain points along the way next year to consider changes to be made. We haven't worked out exactly how that's going to work, but we've agreed to that as a conceptual framework, that it has to be a living document, especially in year one, because I can guarantee you there will be one part of this or more that didn't quite work as well as we'd like, and we would want to have the ability to tweak. So that's already been discussed and agreed to conceptually.
Great, thank you, that's all.
Mr. Davis?
Good work. A lot of interesting concepts in here. I have several questions. Some of them are really picky. I read this very closely. But it's a great job, especially compared to what we have now. On page 67 of the packet, where it says right in the middle, the professional goal, creative, etc., leadership project. Everybody, Susan, you got it? It's 67 of the packet.
67.
It's 5 of 59.
It's in the definition of terms.
Everything about this process was in some way cooperative and collaborative. And it jumped out at me as dissonant, the second sentence there that says no projects may be unilaterally assigned by the administrator. The previous sentence says they are mutually agreed to. So that seemed very dissonant to me, given the spirit of the entire rest of the agreement. And you don't need to say it because it does require mutual agreement.
So I remember this exact phrase, and this was inserted because of teacher concerns that came to us and were really nervous that a principal would be able to assign a project, and so in order to alleviate those fears, we said it twice, and so we agreed that it's redundant.
I would recommend taking it out if you could revisit that. It jumps out as different from everything else in this process. And the previous sentence says mutual agreement, which means we both need to agree. That's just my recommendation.
Thank you.
Let me keep going here. Everywhere in here, Anthony, you've been using the words interchangeably. I really strongly suggest that you eliminate the word tenure everywhere. Tenured and non-tenured, the word does not exist in the education code. It's permanent or non-permanent. So it just, when people say tenured, I'm not saying something denigrating about the committee or anyone on it. It's almost unprofessional. You know, if you're in the business, it's permanent or non-permanent. So tenured is like a layperson term, you know, for people who don't know what we do. So that's just another of my suggestions. On page 101 of the packet, paths at a glance. Susan. 101. In my experience, an evaluatee is a teacher who's being evaluated, which could refer by omission to teachers that aren't being evaluated. So when this said each school year evaluatees are evaluated through the paths defined, that to me said some teachers aren't being evaluated. Right? And I had a conversation with Anthony saying, well, what happens during the off year? And he said, well, there isn't an off year. I said, oh, I didn't see that. So I would recommend, and you can take this down later if you want, that first sentence say, instead of each school year evaluatees are evaluated, you say, all evaluatees shall be evaluated each school year through one of the paths defined above. All evaluatees shall be evaluated each school year. And then another sentence that says something like the particular path utilized will depend on the employee's status, parentheses, permanent or non-permanent, and rating on his or her most recent evaluation. That's what will determine the path. Just as a declarative sentence at the very beginning, that would have told me everything that's happening right in the first or second sentence. And I can do that to you later if you want. You explained emergency. The sentence that says change to his or her evaluation system, do you mean to change to his or her path?
No, we mean the whole system. So you can't change the whole system, you can change your system. So for instance, it could be going from one path to another in emergency. It could also be in path 2, you define what kind of student data is collected, what kind of artifacts that are collected. So let's say there's a path 2 teacher. One of the artifacts that will be collected is student portfolios, and then an emergency happens, a true emergency. We even talked about some of these things that have happened to some of our employees. Goodness forbid, a spouse gets hit by a car. The teacher can certainly do her job during the school day and does it well. But you know what? Student portfolios, the collecting of student portfolios, she can no longer do that this year because of this emergency. So that could be one of the things that gets approved. Hey, we agreed at the beginning of the year you were going to collect student portfolios. Since there's an emergency, and as long as these people agree, we're going to make an allowance so that you won't be judged down because you didn't do student portfolios. Just one example of a non-pathway change.
You're changing the components of your.
It could be a component, yeah.
This is a question just for your feedback, not something I would propose to change. But did you talk about? It's pretty lockstep here that the only way you can get to path 5 is if you've gone to path 4. Did you talk about someone immediately going to path 5?
We did talk about that.
Are you going to tell me what you talked about?
I can. This was actually an opinion that I had, and I shared with the committee, and the committee agreed. Again, Pathway 5 teacher is a minority of minority teachers. We think that we will have Path 4 teachers, from time to time. Even really very fine teachers might go in and out of Path 4. A Path 5 teacher is going to be exceedingly rare in this district. However, if the teacher is really Path 5, it's sort of their last chance, to be frank. Because if they don't really, make the changes that need to be made, we need to move towards, a dismissal proceeding. We did not feel that we wanted to move to that without the documentation that's engendered in Path 4. So it's a gradation of support, it's a gradation of assistance, and it's also a gradation of documentation for those minority of teachers that make it to Path 5.
I agree. On page 104, this is path 1. This is what I would call the probationary path, right?
Correct.
So on the second page, on page 104 at the back, it says path for next year, and then it says applicable on the last evaluation of shouldn't it be of the second year only? Because after the first year, you're still going to be on path 2.
Right, but we'd still state that to the teacher, just to make sure they know.
So even though you know you're going to be on path 2 for 2 years?
Path 1 for 2 years.
Path 1 for 2 years?
Yeah, we can change that.
You're going to be on path 1 for 2 years. Tenured. Let's see. On the page 111, this is path 3. Is this this master's and doctorate? Is this something that the teacher is talking to the evaluator about before they embark on the degree?
Did we discuss that? Was it before? Could it be in process?
You mean as they start next year? I think if they're doing their master's and we started this next year, we have to take that into account. But I think newer programs, I think the idea was that we talked about it sort of benefiting the students in some way vis-a-vis their practice.
Right. How the lessons learned in this program will be used to improve the evaluatee's performance, and how the lessons learned in this program will be shared with others. But to your specific question, it's not. Are you asking? Do you need approval? What are you asking?
I'm not going to use the word approval yet. I'm just going to point out that if this is going to count for one of my evaluation years, every other component here, the professional goal, the NDC, the HIP, involves some sort of prior approval. I mean, you got to go through the HIP thing, whereas it does. I question whether if you're in the middle of a master's or a doctorate, whether that meets the same kind of process.
Can I jump in? It
Please.
may or may not. And so even though the degree and the coursework doesn't require anyone's approval, to use it for Path 3 does require approval, and it does require showing how the lessons learned in the program are going to be used to improve the evaluatee's performance, and also how the lessons learned in the program will be shared with others.
So you and I could honestly disagree whether it should count, right?
Yes.
Okay. That's
And
all
if both don't agree, then it doesn't count for a Path 3.
I can't unilaterally do it.
Correct. And we're gonna say it 3 times.
It's late. Page 120. Huh?
Yes?
I probably know the answer to this, but, or why you did this, but this is Path 5. This is hopefully the exceptional path, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
Path 5 says in the beginning where it's explained, at the end of Path 5, you either recommend a path for the following year or, quote, move towards dismissal. But there's nowhere to say that at the end of the summative evaluation. It just says path for next year. It doesn't say or move towards dismissal. And those are the two choices given for Path 5.
We can discuss that. Thank you.
Let's see. In Paths 4 and 5, is it open enough to allow opportunities for peer assistance and peer input as part of the help to process the intervention and remediation?
So that actually came up as an idea that teachers brought to us. And so we inserted new language. You can see it on page 118. The last bullet of the goal-setting conference on page 118. The evaluator will determine specific support, etc. Next sentence. This may include materials, conferences, workshops, the support of peers, veteran observations, peer coaching, release time, or other specific supports. And that was actually recommended to us by teachers because we did not originally list those. Now again, this is a may list. It's not meant to be expansive, but we specifically called that out.
And it's in 4 also.
It's in 4 and 5.
Last question. When I've done these kinds of things before, maybe you already planned this, there is very deliberate training and professional development for both the evaluators and the staff. What's the plan?
So the plan will be that evaluators will receive training every year of this existence. So we will always meet as evaluators to make sure there's a benchmarking. We work together to see what we're looking for. In the first year, we will give training to all teachers, and we will give training to every new teacher when they join us. In addition, we've been talking about, definitely in the first year, we've already agreed, but maybe even on a going forward basis, we'd invite any teacher that cared to come to join the administrators in the administrative training so they could see, because it would only benefit them as well. There's no reason to exclude them from the process. So we've conceptually agreed that at least in the first year we would do that, and perhaps on a going forward basis. That was actually Jay Beam's idea. He's on the committee.
Thank you.
So I had all the exact same questions Greg did. I really believe that you took care of that for me. So I feel like a broken record, so again, applaud the committee, huge. I think I've said that on 3 or 4 agenda items. And it resonates with all the reading I've done about best practices in teacher evaluation. So just getting that clarification that these are annual evaluations, and we haven't been doing that today. That's not part of the system, correct? It's more every 5 years for permanent employees?
In our current contract, every teacher is evaluated every year.
Okay.
However, every other year could be an alternative year evaluation, and the contract says nothing about what an alternative year evaluation looks like. And so it's really up to the evaluator right now to determine what that is. So technically, every teacher is evaluated every year right now in our district, but this alternative year is dealt with very much with a question mark because the contract is mute about what that actually means.
Okay. I was just wondering the extent to which it's a
making sure we have the capacity among the administrators, because it's a big commitment to.
We talked about
Yeah,
that. For
time.
instance, you'll see that the number of formal observations that have to be written up has actually decreased under all the paths, but the amount of contact inside the classroom has increased. So less reports, more looking at practice.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
I won't belabor this too much. I just wanted to first of all, again, congratulate all the hard work because I saw this lead negotiations last spring, and what you guys have managed to do and the amount of time that we gave you to do it is nothing short of truly incredible. So please take that back to everybody. I also wanted to reflect, given the agenda that we've had tonight, on alignment. And when HCSD Forward kicks out a bullet point that says we want to create a system of professional development that really supports teachers, I can't help but look at this document and think that we have really put something together that is going to do that. So again, lots of applause, because it really all does come together. And then just to kind of touch on something that Greg was talking about in terms of training and everything, I had a question for my own knowledge about practice differentiation between the PIC standards that you're using and what is exemplary. And to me, as an uninformed person who doesn't teach or evaluate teachers, I'm not sure what the difference is, and I'm not sure if the standard is you know it when you see it, or if there's training around this, or if anybody can give me just sort of a very brief example about what that looks like.
Let me try, and then I will put it to the other members of the team. I think the best thing that you could look at in the CSTPs is the difference of the verbs.
Yes.
So
that was what I noticed. I just didn't know how that.
yeah, so for instance, I just turned to a page 70. Page 70 is on standard 1. Connecting learning to students' prior knowledge, backgrounds, life experiences, and interests. The verbs in the practice is consistent are helps, connects, opens, addresses, and supports. Those are the things that is really required to be consistent with professional standards. But if you want to be exemplary, you have to build and expand and design. These are a higher level verb. And so I think that that is a useful lens. Anybody in the committee would like to expand that answer?
I think part of our training will be to make sure we are on the same page about what those words mean, because even if we define them, it's going to be specific situations that we need to talk about.
That was my sense about this, because I'm thinking that most of the teachers that I've seen do this, if not every single lesson or every single class, at least elements of exemplary behavior and regular professional are there. So I just was curious how that was going to get teased out and put into some sort of a formal document. And I'm assuming, to Greg's point, that there's going to need to be training and discussion, and I guess to a certain degree norming about what that looks like. Greg?
You mentioned how fast this got done, and it reminded me of something that happened to me recently. I usually try not to mention Hillsborough at my other bargaining tables because it gets mentioned to me often enough. But I was at another district very recently in this county, and I think they're in their second year of still researching whether they should go forward on a task force to potentially, I mean, it's just, and then pilot for 17 years or whatever. And I finally, I couldn't help myself. Our folks did this in 6 months. We're done. It was just,
That must have engendered a lot of goodwill too.
it was. We're at impasse, yeah. But I'm just proud of that.
Catherine.
The only thing I was going to add on exactly what Modell said, I mean, we are all committed to going.
Again, we can all hear you, but this is so it gets recorded.
I apologize. So I agree with what Modell said, that I think we're all committed to going to the training as administrators and talking these things over. But I do think there's a defining moment when you go into a teacher's classroom and you just have a wow experience.
And it's just so overwhelming that you're taking notes and you can't wait to have this teacher share out at the next faculty meeting. And for me, although again, I think we're all committed to having that same experience and that norming, I think you just know. And again, you just can't wait to share it. And that I think is that above and beyond for practice of exemplary. It's everything you see and then that, oh my God, you know, this is fantastic.
Chris, you okay? That was close. Any other comments from board members? Anybody in the public like to make a comment? Okay. Can we check you in?
You might want to go hear her play her band.
So again, thank you. Okay, we are next to the Communications Committee, 8.12.
I would invite Karin and Dawn to discuss this, as you've been hearing me a lot.
Excellent. I think this is, we really want to have an at-length discussion about this. No, this is a very appropriate time to have this particular agenda item.
Why do you think we put it on exactly here?
Exactly, yeah, because this is, we, as the Communications Committee, we've actually been hard at work. We have, I'm not sure if Dawn knows this is our philosophy yet, but there is a fantastic quote which I just said to Anthony, and I'm not saying to Dawn. Done is better than perfect. And this relates to communications. And I really think that we want to find new ways to communicate. We want to communicate better. We want to have increased engagement. So we're really trying lots of different stuff. And this is really going to be a process of figuring out what works. We're in the process of identifying our stakeholders, looking at the ways in which they receive communication and reviewing whether or not our existing communication is good enough as it exists. Should it be tweaked? Finding new ways to communicate, looking at the populations it affects. We're going to be surveying people, asking for feedback, asking for new ideas, etc. So we're in the process of doing all of that. In terms of a board, as you can see tonight, and this is actually going to be indicative of meetings going forward, we are doing a lot of stuff. And we have a lot of great stuff to talk about, and we want to give everything, you know, when the board sets up, for instance, we did, you know, we asked all our questions before tonight so that we could be prepared. That isn't really doing a huge service to the people who are attending the board meeting, because you want to know what our questions are, perhaps, maybe you don't, but I think it's helpful, I think it's informative. So in order to enhance the quality of discussion, because as you know, no more than two of us can speak on any one topic, in order to enhance the communication between the board on some of our heftier topics, and also allow people who are attending the meetings to see a more meaningful discussion, we actually need more time to discuss things, particularly the items that are coming up. We have local control funding formula, we have the action plans that are going to be coming up, which those are going to be some pretty concrete discussions. We have budget philosophy. We are going to be really looking at how we budget the district and really sort of taking that apart. I mean, there are many topics, the topics are actually set by Board President Anthony. But Dawn and I, one of the things we're doing is we're also looking at best practices in other districts. Poor Don, he's been fantastic at sort of rolling with everything. And one of the things we are looking at is actually having a regular board meeting, and at least we're trying this in the short term, a regular board meeting and a special board meeting per month. And we're just proposing it in the short term so that we can get through some more weightier topics. We're not really convinced that great work happens in hour 6 of a meeting. So we want to make sure that we've been meeting since 5. We will then go into closed session when we're done with this. And we want to make sure that all the things facing our district and that ultimately goes down to student learning is being given the best consideration. So we're proposing that the board approve we'll look at possible dates, but actually special meetings going forward for the months of February, March, April, and May.
finished?
I'm finished.
Are you gonna let Don talk?
Yes, yes.
Does Don have anything to say?
I have nothing to say on this.
Okay. Well, then I'm gonna go first because I'm at the other end of the table from you guys. I just had a clarification. When you are talking about the second bullet point, the 5 p.m. session during the March, April, May, you're talking about regular meetings, right? Not these additional ones that you're trying to schedule? Okay.
Our regular fund.
Okay, so this is all, when you say to be added, you're talking about in addition to the regular plus the specials that we double team typically right now, okay? And by the way, I should have said thank you for all of your hard work. And it's not just on this presentation this evening, but the communications committee has been very busy. And it's great. Thank you both. It's good energy to have on the board.
We are following Karen's idea of just trying a lot of things and not expecting them all to work. So we are throwing a lot of things out there and seeing what the reception is.
It's not Karen and Don's idea. Okay. Greg or Margie, do you have any other questions?
I was just gonna say, I think this is a great idea because I feel like we have a lack of time, especially to go deep on topics. Does anyone else feel like they don't have a lot of time? And this is critical work, as Karen said. So I think adding some meetings is actually imperative to a lot of the quick work we're trying to get done and go faster. So I know everybody has constrained schedules, but this is a high priority, and I think if we meet more frequently and maybe not as late as at night.
The
it'd be good.
intent is to shorten the meetings and not make them 7-hour meetings. It's to,
How are you proposing to divide up the agendas? I mean, are you thinking that we won't get reports from our community partners at every single one? Are you just thinking that each of these special meetings will be single topic, or will they cover a number of things? I mean, is there a plan?
I think what we're proposing, and Anthony, correct me if this sounds right, but we're looking at still having our special, regular meetings, which have the same format like we had tonight, and then having a special meeting, which, and it will be at Anthony's direction as to who has to attend those meetings from a staff perspective. But it would be, they would have specific topics. So it might be one topic, it might be 2 topics, but they would be very direct, more robust conversations. Study sessions.
And it would be up for Lynn and I to determine, there's 2 different effective models. It could be one weighty, big, important topic to talk about at a special meeting. Or it could be, hey, why don't we take some of the other things that we have to do, business items, pretty soon we're gonna start to have to approve contracts for site work, for the West project. All that's important and takes time too. You could collect some of those things, put them into the special meeting for action, it's fine to do that, and then reserve the big weighty conversation to the public. They're both public meetings, to the regular session, so that the public could hear. So those are 2 different models, they're both valid, but that would be for the board president and the superintendent to work together on.
And we are trying to reduce burden on the staff in terms of having to stay for 7 hours to go, and
Except for Susan.
except for Susan. Susan will have to be in all of them. Yeah.
Susan has to come to every meeting. Greg?
That could be your path 3, baby.
So, let me ask you, are you expecting us to pick dates tonight?
No, I figured we could do
Okay.
that through a doodle survey or something.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions from board members, for the committee, for Anthony? Anybody in the public that would like to address us on this topic? Okay. Do we have consensus to let him go for it?
The action item to
I don't think that we're taking a vote though, because we don't have any dates. Do you want to take a vote?
Well, it's a recommendation to send the list of possible dates, the meetings described, digitally. Shall I make a motion? Is it,
I think you can. I don't know that what we're truly voting on, other than we are agreeing to task ourselves with additional meetings, which we customarily do whenever we need to anyway. We don't usually take votes on that, but if everybody wants to vote on it, go ahead, think about it.
No, I don't know.
No,
the
it's
protocol.
okay. I'm just
following what it says.
But we do have consensus that we would like to look for these 4 meetings.
We will find it.
It does say action on the agenda, so.
It says action? All right, let's vote on it. Go for it, Margie.
Okay, I move that the board approve the recommendations listed in section B and direct communications committee to and a list of possible dates for the meetings described above digitally for immediate calendaring.
I'll second. Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion is approved unanimously. Thank you. Okay, we are on item 9.0, public hearing for items not on the agenda. Is there any member of the public that would like to address us on an item not on the agenda? You need a microphone, right? Okay. Where did it go? There we go. Thank you, Chris. Give it a second. It needs to warm up. Thank you.
Hi. For the record, Dr. Pearl Wolf. Wanted to, first of all, applaud the agenda items that we have today, and specifically in the context of a community of kindness and respect. So, in that way, I would like to promote awareness about zero tolerance for harassment in our Hillsborough City School District, and specifically in our community at large. So recently there's an example of harassment using late night phone calls at 10:48, calling to harass, situation about miscommunication when it comes to 8th grade Washington DC trip. So to that context, it would be great for us to consider televising and to have accurate and timely release of items. So for example, today, Principal Micus spoke 4 or 5 times about the fact that if you don't make the deadline of February 27th, your $1,050 is going to be gone. So that kind of communication needs to be very timely and also very much to the right audience. As we can see right now, it is close to, 10:50. The same time that the harasser would call, say XYZ items to a member of the public. So my plea to this board and also to the community is we should definitely be aware of such a situation. And the good news is that we are in a very richly diverse community and very tolerant of a lot of support for our students, our teachers, our educators. However, when it comes to harassment, my recommendation and my request is a zero tolerance for harassment. And not only that, anyone who has a current HSF visible officer position and or past APG president position ought not to be in a leadership position. And I also request for immediate consideration for removal of such current officers. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to address the board? Thank you. Item 10.0, the consent agenda. Does anyone want to remove any items from the consent agenda this evening? Hearing no requests, maybe you'd like to make a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Consent agenda was approved unanimously. Item 11.0, communication and board items. I'm going to start, I have a few. First, I want to publicly again thank the Geddes family for hosting such a nice gathering with the board and ACM a few weekends ago. We thoroughly enjoyed your hospitality, and it was great all hanging out with whoever could make it that night. I really had a good time, so do it again. Secondly, I wanted to pass along this note from the Shimizu family in recognition of the governance team's donation to the Lacoste Shimizu Philanthropy Fund, and let you take a look at it. It's gorgeous and very touching. Still at a loss for words. Next, I received an email probably 2 weeks ago, concerning a group that is proposing that the school board adopt a resolution regarding closing the commercial property loophole for Prop 13. Anthony and I think we missed each other on this. So we don't have it in front of you. I took the liberty before coming in tonight of pulling our sort of norms and protocols for further discussion that we had on the notion of resolutions, and we had sort of decided, I'm not sure, do we officially adopt these as a, okay. We only look at those resolutions that have clarity of purpose, directly affect the Hillsborough City School District and or public education, and do not recommend to citizens how to vote. Those are the ones we typically will have put on the agenda for consideration. I personally think this flunks the clarity of purpose thing, because it is, while articulating a political view about whether or not Prop 13 should be adjusted to tax commercial properties more in furtherance of benefiting public education, it doesn't really lay out the mechanics of how they're proposing to do that or what the effects of any proposed law would be. So I will share this with you. If any of you feel strongly that it should be placed on the agenda for future consideration at another meeting, let me know, and Anthony and I will work on that together. Next, this came through my email today. I don't know if all of you received it. There's an interactive online town hall sponsored by California State Senator Jerry Hill that's taking place on February 19th from 6:30 to 7:30. I probably won't be able to do this, but although it came to me, I think anybody can participate, and there's an opportunity to submit questions in advance. So if anybody would like more information about this, I'm happy to provide it. And lastly, I just wanted to call out upcoming events for board members' potential participation. There's a recreation meeting, and members of the public, of course, welcome. February 18th at 5 p.m. And there's two superintendent's coffees upcoming, one on the 19th and the 25th. I don't know how many of you have those on your calendars already, but it's nice to have a few of us there. So I think that does it for me. Oh, and actually, I'll say it again. On the 8th is the HSF dinner dance, and that, of course, is also during the morning our joint meeting with the town. So make sure that that's on your calendars. And that's it for me. Anthony.
On page 177, the board has the opportunity of submitting a ballot for delegates. These are the delegates to the Subregion 5B Delegate Assembly. We can choose no more than 3 candidates. One of the candidates listed is one that we nominated, Greg Danis. So we can select only him or him and 2 others, or nobody. And I put it to the board for comments and discussion.
Who would like to start? Don.
Mr. Dennis doesn't seem to have served on this board before, but I think we should give someone new a chance.
Well said. Any other contributions?
So I know Greg probably knows a lot of these people. I don't know if the rest of you do. So I do know Mark and Elisa and Kalima and Alan. They all serve on the County School Board Association. So sort of a hard decision because I think they're all really great. And I was just trying to think through in my head what criteria would I use. And one thing I would say is that Elisa has been president. There's a chance she might continue as president of San Mateo County School Board Association, and there's a wonderful vantage point that she has by working with the whole county, and she can speak to that experience. And then also, last year I mentioned Kalima, who's a relatively new board member up in Jefferson Union High. She is president this year, and she has done tremendous work so far on really unifying her board in a common direction, and she has a track record of passing several parcel taxes in Pacifica, and in her application she does speak to the advantage she has of being from the northern part of the county and sort of representing that geographical area. So those were some of the things I was thinking off the top of my head, but I wanted to hear from all of you to see if you guys have an opinion.
I would echo Elisa and Colleen.
I don't know Lisa,
The
but I
guy, I
like
don't
Kalima,
know.
she's great. Yeah, I don't know about this great guy, but whatever you say. So, any other comments or questions?
And just to distinguish that Mark and Alan are also great. It's a hard choice. I know those two were on.
So I'm hearing consensus around Greg, Elisa, and Kalima, is that correct?
Yeah. Okay. Any other
I have
communications?
I have an announcement. So the County School Board Association is planning an event on March 10th at 6:30 at CSM, and it's going to be around 21st century learning environments and using design thinking to transform those environments. We've invited Milpitas, Superintendent, Kerry Matsuoka, and his board president. They will present, I don't know if anyone, I think I circulated that article about Milpitas, and he used design thinking to transform his district in just 2 years. And then also, we've invited Ken Montgomery, who's the new executive director of the Charter High School Design Tech, which is opening in San Mateo Unified, and they are also using design thinking. So the theme is sort of around design thinking, and an opportunity to hear what some innovative people are doing in our county. And I think we're going to be opening it to a few other people besides school board members. So let me know if you're interested. It is mainly focused for school board members, but I'm hoping maybe Anthony can come and maybe someone from HCSD Forward. Yeah, that might be great too. Yeah, CSM, 6:30 to 9. Yeah, I'm in charge of logistics, so if you want to pick your meal, we can also talk about it. So anyway, I can get more information, but I hope you mark your calendars.
I choose lobster.
We have lobster, but we don't have lobster.
Are there any other communications at 11 o'clock, and we're punchy? Hearing none. I have 12.0, public address concerning items on the closed session agenda. Any member of the public wish to address us on a closed session agenda item? Hearing none, we adjourn at 11 p.m. to closed session. Thank you all. This was huge. Yeah.